Student Records Annual Notification of Rights, and I believe that's, who is that? Who's that? Okay.
Just make sure that mic's on.
Hello.
Is it ready?
Yeah, it's ready.
Okay, good.
It's good. This policy is just basically defining what we consider directory information to give out to parents and what we'll release when we get subpoenas or affidavits in the mail. It also gives the annual notice so that parents know they have annually by September 1st to let the school know in writing what they want or do not want for us to give out. That's listed on our directory information. That's it.
Were there any
Any
questions on the new
questions?
policy?
Does this affect like the PTA's directory? I mean,
It's more specific to address, name, and if they don't want any of that information out, then that's when they would let the school know.
because the PTA director, I believe, does include things like that too. Do they let the PTA know then not to include that information?
There's usually a spot on the back that you check.
If they want it or not.
Okay.
And I can clarify with that too, to make sure that they have it on there.
Because they'd have to get the information from
Yeah.
the school anyway.
Right. And I do believe that they can also opt out so that we'll have that. And I think with Skyward, we can put that information in there and be able to pull a list to see who wants it and who doesn't.
And is Skyward the reason that we're doing, I mean, it's just going through that process to do this, or is there something that happened that is causing us to?
It's
put
just,
together?
we were going through the policies, and Deborah Owen and I had a conversation about directory information and spelling it out to make sure that we're specific in what we as a district want to give out. And so that's when we're like, we need to make sure that it's spelled out for everyone to be able to see. Anything else?
Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you very much.
Next on the agenda is the revised policy for student wellness.
Yeah, this is, come down from the state, policy 6.411. Had some changes that are mandatory to match up nutrition, new guidelines for nutrition for what can and cannot be sold during school hours. Also had some corrections to update the new, physical activity law that was already put into place, but this is to update our temporary 1 year from last year's changes. We are switching from the previous spot of the wellness where it was on the students, the SS3s. The state recommends that we put it in student section in the 6s. So it has totally been rewritten in VANT. Some things transferred over, some things didn't. Like I said, the major changes will be the physical activity law. Our commitment to coordinated school health is still the same. Healthy school index, all those things that we are currently been doing since 2008 are all still in place. Healthy school teams. Most things is just that right there.
It just seemed more detailed.
It's a little bit more detail. The biggest part on the nutrition is they had a change from schools have to meet the smart snack requirements. It's a calculation that we'll be posting on our website to be sold or given to students at school. So if it's a reward system, it has to meet that certain requirement. And that's the biggest thing. The school day runs from 12 a.m. to 30 minutes after the last bell for that school day for the district. So it does say concessions in there, but it does not affect the football or any of those other topics.
Because it's after.
That's after the day.
Okay.
But anything that's given to a student during the school day, whether it's reward from the teacher or anything else, needs to meet the smart stack calculation, which is really not hard to calculate. They have a website. You believe what actually qualifies. It's not too scary.
Okay.
Can you talk about the council, for the advisory council for a
Mhm.
moment? Is it district-wide, is it school site based?
The healthy school teams or the
No,
council?
the council.
Council is more of a district.
Okay, that's what I.
Right now, what
okay.
we're doing is we've been working with Healthy Germantown and counseling there. We have mayor, any public citizens that are allowed to be there, we use that right now. And our state's loving that model, what we're doing, because we've initiated a lot of things like more bike lanes, potentially we applied for grants and things like that, so.
But in doing this, because it specifically speaks to having parents and students involved. So my question was, how are they chosen? to serve?
It's not chosen, it's volunteer, so we can
Okay.
hold it next year. I'm gonna try to get more students. We usually just don't get a lot of student activity in on
What
it.
about parents?
Parents are currently on the Germantown Healthy
Okay,
Advisory. They're
so
on
it's
there.
really not,
It's not specific
it's not
to the
ours.
district.
It's really,
It's kind of a,
We're on the same page.
Yes, we are,
yeah,
yeah.
it's a combination of a city to look and kind of, and look at the healthy habits as together with the city, parents, community members, business, all those things.
So do we need to add that into our policy? Because when I read the policy, it reads to me that it's our council and under our direction. So I'm
Yeah,
just wondering if that
yeah,
should be, linked that it's a city
I
linkage.
love the fact that we're working with the
Mhm.
city
Yes.
and how that's working out.
Okay.
But I think it would be advisable that we put an addendum or something in the policy.
And
Do you want to, if we just put in coordination with the city in that policy, would that cover the city engagement with?
I think you could do that in the coordination
In
with
coordination
Healthy
with the city,
Germantown.
yes, with
Yes,
Healthy
yeah,
Germantown.
just to name what.
Just
the
to
name
council
what it is.
Yeah,
Right,
because
right.
to
Exactly
me, it was,
how
I
we
thought it
did-
was being established versus.
And that's
it's
where I
already
was and
established.
how
It was
we
established in
achieved it.
2014, I believe. We were the first city to get
Right.
the grant from the governor's office. I actually worded it in that exact same way in the grant application, so I don't think there'll be any problems with it.
So we can change that policy so that when y'all
I
get
just
ready to
would
discuss
rather
it
be
tonight.
specific.
Yeah.
And that's
That'll work.
okay that when we spell out these responsibilities, is that included in the responsibilities for that council and the city as well? Just to make sure that we shore that up so that they know what we're looking to them as
Mhm.
well. I mean, is that
We can-
documented in there?
Yeah, we can make it a part of the agenda. It
Okay.
just needs to meet, I believe, a minimum of at least one time. I don't remember if it's, healthy school teams meet quarterly within the schools, and that's made of teachers, principals, that's at our schools.
Right, right.
Healthy council, we can just make it one meeting.
Okay, just to make sure that all these
Yeah.
four things are covered.
And we could put that on
Okay.
one of the agendas and make sure that
That
they're
would be
being
great.
covered. We can do that.
That would be great.
And, coordination with Steve.
Okay. That's perfect, thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Fisher?
Is this, the physical activity, is this shoring up to this past bill that was?
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay,
This is the brand new physical activity, kind of the
TSBA
amendment to
recommended
the
Right.
669. It's the adjustment, now we've gone to the 130 minutes down from that 220
right,
from
okay, that's what I thought,
K1.
okay,
Yeah.
so that's,
Mhm.
and then we're, have that 90 minutes for the high school students.
And middle school now.
Okay.
There is one regulation in there that one of those 15 minutes of that 130 has to be the non-structured, which would be our current practice of recess.
Right,
But Go Noodle couldn't count for that 15 minutes, but PE can now count physical
As that,
activity.
right.
So-
okay.
So we shouldn't have any problems meeting the requirement for physical activities.
Perfect.
Any other questions for Mr. Fisher?
You want to add that now to the policy, what we recommend?
Yeah. You can go ahead.
If we're gonna vote on it tonight.
Yeah. That's a good one.
Could you just do it in the opening?
Yeah, in the first
Yeah.
sentence.
Instead of
first
saying a
sentence.
healthy
Yeah.
advisory council shall be established, because we're not establishing it,
Will be a part of the
or something
healthy
like
city or something.
The advisory council and partnership with. Yeah.
On line 12,
Mhm.
the Health Advisory Council should be established. We can put in
In
coordination.
coordination with the
With-
city.
Yeah,
Suggestion.
but it still says you're establishing a council.
so maybe just.
Yeah, but this policy will, that's always going to read that way, and you're
Okay.
always going to have
Okay.
a council. So that's going to be a challenge if you read it as established as being the first time that you create it. That is odd.
Maybe we could just take out the word established, just a health advisory council shall be a part of, or shall be
Or we
working
can just say
coordination
serve.
with.
I think if you get rid of shall be established.
Yes,
A health advisory council shall serve as a resource to school sites for implementing
And I think you can
policies.
say in conjunction with Healthy
Yeah.
Germantown.
And
that's
think
right
of
at the
it.
end of that, in conjunction with the Healthy Germantown.
Yes, So then we're hitting two birds with one stone. It doesn't mean that we have to create something new.
That's
It
right.
means we can use what's in existence.
Thank you.
Yeah, that is odd. Because once you pass this policy once,
it's established.
it's no longer, yes, it's established.
So you come down to a healthy advisory council shall
Serve as a resource to school sites for implementing policies in coordination with the city of Germantown's Healthy Germantown.
Because if we cease to have healthy Germantown, we'll just amend the policy.
Exactly.
So when we discuss this tonight during the meeting, the motion needs to read as amended.
As in.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
very much.
Okay. Next on the agenda is the fiscal management policies.
So we have a 2.805, 2.806, and 2.808 provided to you, the provisions. Stacy, if you want to go on a roll call.
Basically, these are based on the 3 years of functioning as a district. In speaking with Ms. Owen from the beginning, she asked that it might be a good idea to go back to the TSBA original policies. So these, in each of these policies, go back to that. And also, after taking this position, Mr. Jones and I met with the city of Germantown because the statute allows that we follow the city of Germantown's policy, which you'll see addressed in 2.806.
So I'll explain just
Sure.
briefly. Essentially, the school board has the option of going one of two paths. You can create your own purchasing policy with limitations, which are more restrictive to the state, or you can follow whatever your municipality's purchasing policies are. It is Mr. Jones's recommendation to follow that one because it sets a $4,000 cap before we have to go out to bids. So then for smaller items with our school districts, it saves a lot of getting 3 bids for
Replacing
things.
the administrative burden.
So there's a lot of issues at the school where we need packs of paper, and we're getting it from Home Depot or one of the home goods stores. So
That impacts central office.
Greatly. In fact, much of the conversation has revolved around Mr. Kathy and Mr. Law, and having worked with them, I saw some of that directly. So again, this jumps to 2.806, and we'll talk about those thresholds in general, in more specifics. But 2.805, you'll see that much of it deals directly with the executive committee, the superintendent, and the change of verbiage there. And then the change to the TSBA policy deals more specifically with the emergency purchases, defining emergency purchases and the prior authorization. And then, again, much of it in 2.805 deals with really the change of director of schools to superintendent, or the superintendent and/or his or her designee.
Is there a reason on a couple of those we took the designee out?
That was a last-minute change after we had made the initial submission from Ms. Owen. So in that particular case, that was her, in the teal you're
Yes.
speaking about,
Yes.
that is her suggestion in those particular cases.
So that there would not be allowed to have a designee in that situation?
yeah, so I think it's her opinion.
And
that
Then
in
there's
those-
some areas
in those
for
cases,
below
it
that
needs
would
to be.
Yes.
Okay, but then other areas,
Limiting.
it's okay to have a designee?
Yes.
Okay.
That's coming directly from.
Is there what's an example of an emergency purchase? Just
I'll give you an example.
Okay.
So the pipe burst at Farmington or at Houston Middle School, there
Yes,
was one
yeah,
at Farmington
behind
too,
that, mhm.
where it's bubbling up and
Yes,
coming out
uh-huh.
there. And normally, if we have a normal process, we have to go to 3 different plumbers, we have to put out an RFP, we have to create documents for that. So we were having to shut off water, so we can contact a plumbing company that we've used in the past before. That's an emergency purchase.
Okay.
A lot of times it is in Mr. Kathy's world where it's parts.
Okay.
Something has broken, air conditioning units could be an example where
The
we need-
heating at Dogwood a couple of years
Yes.
ago.
So if we have heating or air, usually it's heating, air, plumbing issues
Okay.
that become
That you
emergency.
have
Yes.
To be able to keep the schools open.
That's right.
Yes.
Okay, okay. And this again was just pulling language that maybe wasn't there?
Yes.
Okay, just pulling it
Yes.
back in to
Yeah,
make sure,
that
okay.
is definition.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other questions on 2.805 in the book that it became? 2.806. Again, the language that was referred to as far as the thresholds was concerned, and again, the teal refers to something that Ms. Owen added here. The local governing body, she specifically came back in and said to the city of Germantown, Tennessee, that language, the local governing body, is straight from the statute, and she made it specific to us. And this, in particular, makes it so that we don't have to come back, when the city of Germantown changes their thresholds, we don't have to come back and make those changes. Yes, yes. And there are other districts in the state of Tennessee that follow these statutes,
Sure.
Williamson County, Nashville, et cetera.
Who's the purchasing agent? Does it vary, or is it one person?
The purchasing
Okay, okay,
specialist,
so that's-
so,
that would
yeah.
be you, this is, okay, thank you.
And again, more specific verbiage has been added here. Any other questions? On 2.808,
Short and sweet.
Yeah.
short and sweet, purchase orders. This is not too specific, but defining, and much of the specifics will be going in the manual that we're writing, so. Yes, it was taken out and noticed. I think I got happy on the spell check where I approved and went through, so.
That's great.
Anything else?
Good work.
Thank you, Ms. Spicer.
Thank you, thank you. Any other questions for them on purchasing? Ne-
And also, we are waiving the second reading.
Yes.
Yes.
We are waiving, they've asked that we waive the second reading on this because our fiscal year begins July 1, and they'd like to be able to use these new purchasing procedures.
From the
So
beginning
if
of
anybody
fiscal
has
year.
any questions about that right now, it'd be a good time to ask
I don't have a problem.
Mr. Jones if you have a problem with us waiving the second reading on this so that these policies can go into effect in July 1, the beginning of our fiscal year.
Next board meeting until
Till
August.
August.
Yeah. I don't have a problem.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Weiser. Next on the agenda is Airmark contract renewal.
No, MOU.
Oh, I skipped one,
Yes,
sorry.
Number 5.
MOU between Tennessee Department of Education and GMSD for Coordinated School Health LEA grant.
Real simply, this pays for Mr. Fisher and
Yes.
his position.
I love your signatures very much. Just basically, at the end of the, I went through a probably 3-week grant process.
So you didn't want me to skip this?
Just skip that. It's very important, basically saying that we were in compliance last year. Everything that has been turned in and that is mandated to receive the grant, and the grant had been awarded. As soon as you sign that, I get to continue working with the school district.
Well, we definitely want to see
Yes.
that.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Good.
that's all it is. A couple signatures, and I'll return that to the state. and be good
So
to
this is
go.
the not a
It's continuing the grant.
That's what I thought.
Kind
Okay.
of refill the pot.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Well, thank you for everything.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions about that one?
That was
Okay.
pretty easy.
Next
Now
is the
the
Airmark contract renewal. Mr. Jones?
We gave you the original contract, amendment number 1, and then we had amendment number 2. So we gave the first 2 documents to you for your
Right.
Amendment number 2 basically is for the 17-18 school year, revising the general administrative expense, monthly amount, management fee. And if you notice in Schedule B, or Exhibit B, this will mirror your budget. And this has been reviewed by our attorney. It's also been approved by the Tennessee Department of Education and School Nutrition.
And so it's showing that we should be having a profit of
There's a guarantee of right at
$4,300.
If for some reason they only make $2,000, they cut us a check for $2,364.
And so we should not be having to put any money in except for
Except for our
appliances.
capital.
and-
Right,
yeah.
any issues from that?
Refrigerators that go out.
Okay.
Repairs to.
So we won't be putting in to the tune of, in the
Yes,
past.
because when we started through, we were
30,000.
300,000 in the hole.
I think we're looking around 116, so we did drop it quite a bit.
So this is a huge step in the right direction.
And it didn't look like the price of lunch had gone up either.
Oh, that's the one that does, there's a typo in that one.
Yeah.
It's on, page 3E, top of the page. There shall be at least 180, I would assume. Yeah, page 3.
Oh,
Top of the
there
page.
should be at least 180 full service days. with that.
Right, and it was in parentheses 180, but it needed to be spelled out like the.
Oh, 180.
Yeah.
Yes.
Are there any changes, any significant changes from a lunch perspective from last year to this year, the upcoming? You know, we've been making, it seem like there's a
Yes,
lot of,
good
you know,
progress.
yeah, so I didn't know if there's any anticipated changes or if we're just kind of
Not that I'm
status quo
aware of.
or,
No, probably the only focus we talked a little bit about will be the teacher lunches.
okay.
But they're always redoing menu, new
Right.
items. That's part of what they're doing, is they're always doing the marketing. So
Okay.
they're always, they have the student group that is actually looking at, you know, they give samples to see, you know, what's gonna sell better. So they're always
Tweaking it.
tweaking the actual menus and things like that.
So they can have better sales.
But as far as just, yeah, as far as the structure, that stays the
Okay.
same.
Do they do any surveys of parents or of the student? I mean, at certain ages, it's the parents,
Yes.
at certain ages, it's the students. Do they do surveys like that?
Yeah, they do.
Okay, I don't,
And one additional item to mention is the atrium of the high school.
uh-huh.
Having service, that area is a point of service as well. So we tried that for about a month, I guess, this past school year.
And that was successful?
Yes. So we're looking to enhance that for the full year.
Very good, okay.
Because at one time, when we originally started, we were gonna put the Java Cafe out there, but it was gonna be
Yes.
too cost effective to
To
bring,
run
to
the
run the
plumbing.
lines out
Yes,
there.
Yeah.
So this has been very inexpensive. I don't think it costs us anything. Put it out there. Just equipment. Yeah. And we got some of that from another school.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Any questions for Mr. Jones on earmark contract? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Jones. Next, we're on to the revised GMSD general fund budget. Mr. Jones?
And I think attached to the e-meeting is schedule of all the revisions. They were highlighted in yellow
Thank you, yes.
throughout the document, so. Any questions on those? I can walk through some of them.
We do have ones that's going to be added to this. One of the requests that we had talked about during the budget process was to really look at Dogwood's map schedule. And so when we're ready to look at that, we realized today, because we weren't having a June or July meeting, that we need to discuss some of those changes today in order to make Dogwood's map schedule better, richer, more effective. So, Ms. Jones, did you have a question on the other budget, or did you want to talk about?
Well, we can go whatever order. I just had
Okay.
a few questions, but it's nothing, I mean.
Okay, so we can go ahead. And Dr. Park and I probably spent the past 3 or 4 days, actually last week too, really looking at the Dogwood map schedule and how to make it work. We did the same thing with Riverdale when they were requesting additional PE positions to see that it was justified. And it is the worst game of Sudoku that you could ever play because you're trying to balance how many times you have a teacher available during the day, how many maps are being offered to students, and we were having trouble making that balance at Dogwood. And so Ms. Price had actually reached out to us to see what could we do. And we think that we have a really good solution that hits the board's goals that we've previously talked about, but it will require some additional staffing. So we just wanted to talk about that. So you can see in your packets, Dogwood's maps, proposed map schedule. Ms. Price received this today, but we've been talking to her about this process all the way through. And so, Dr. Park, I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, and the
So
budget
the-
amendments on top of
Behind
it,
that.
Yes.
thank you.
So the first document you'll see on the computer, it's a huge spreadsheet, but it has each MAPS teacher listed and the subject that they teach. And then between the ones that are shared, so for the art teacher, you'll see this is
Blacked out.
blacked out because they are shared with Farmington. So what we did is we went through, our main goals in looking at this is to provide common planning for the teachers.
And more common planning as far as the length of time.
Right.
One of the issues that they had at Dogwood was they were doing 30-minute PE classes. Now, they were running multiple of those PE classes, but the problem is, as a teacher, by the time I get my students there, dropped off, come back and start working on something, it's time to go get them again. So it was problematic for the school.
So this schedule allows them to have 55-minute MAPS times, which would allow that to be 55-minute common planning.
Every day.
So, and that's available every day. So whether they meet as a team every day to common plan, or if they have one day set aside for a week for PLC, and then they adjust it. However, this opens it up to be common planning available to them every day. So we were happy to work this in the schedule. If you'll look through this, you'll see that it just lists every teacher available there, and you'll see a few items. We've got it split up, so you'll have an A and B schedule. So, for example, for PE, some students may have PE one time, 1 week, but the next week they will have it 2 times. So we are making sure that we are getting in PE time for our students.
So all that being said, when we looked at all the pieces of the puzzle, what are we going to be able to provide students? In that 2-week period, they're going to get 3 days of PE. They will get 2 days of art. They will get 2 days of music. They'll have 1 day of library. They'll have 1 day of a guidance rotation. And the request that we're asking for is we're asking to add a teaching assistant position at each of our schools, at Dogwood, Farmington, and Riverdale. The purpose of that position would be for computer skills, so that they can work with the librarian, or they can also float into the class. So we've talked about age appropriate, whether it's typing, whether it's getting ready for the state test. It's really that media position to help them. The reason we said teaching assistant position is because we have the CTTs that are currently in the school that serve, so this person can help monitor, but it's going to be a joint team effort between those teaching positions to really teach our students computer skills from kindergarten through 5th grade. So
And so that'd just be a coordinated through at each grade level as to what
It
level
will.
and when it
Yes.
fits in best?
that's right.
And
So
they'll
there's
have
software that
software.
we currently have
Right.
that does include those things, whether it's, so really when you're talking about typing skills and their dexterity, you're
Right.
probably talking about after 3rd grade, but just there are other skills that they can learn when they're K2. So that's going to be one of our requests, and that's the way that we can make this balance. Without having that extra option for another course, we would be looking at adding an additional guidance, which we don't think would be the best fit. We really thought this was something the board would be interested in looking at, is those computer skills.
So the add of that is to allow, and then you took to the wellness to AD, is that a
Yeah, so,
change from last
so
year?
if you go all the way through, I'll show you the page that shows, these are the per teacher, so you can
It
see
makes it work.
this.
Yeah.
And it meets
One of the things
our needs.
that you can see is that not only do our teachers have common planning time,
Right.
but so do our specialists. So on each specialist, so here's Ms. Martin's PE schedule, for example. You can see her lunch period, but you can also see her planning time with the other PE teachers during that time. So
Okay.
it balances for everybody.
So
If you
all the
allow for-
MAPS teachers have the same lunch period, and they have the same planning period after lunch. So if they wanted to alternate, or if we needed them to assist during lunches at the school for any reason, or to help with any other things, then they can stagger, because they have the planning built in with their lunch. So that's an extra time, which also allows for travel for any of the people that we share to go between the schools.
You can also, this is the page that you want to look at. It's the
Oh, okay.
color-coded page, and if you put them together like this, you can see the 2-week cycle for all of the kindergarten classes, for example. So they're going from lamps from 1 to 155 for all 7 or 8 of those sections. And you can see where the computer courses fit into that map schedule and make it all balance out. It will require, and we had talked about this, one of our growth positions will be consumed at Dogwood, because we do need someone to help with ELL and also with music courses there. So there is an additional teaching position that the board has already budgeted that we would be using for this
Using
schedule.
that instead of.
Well,
so in
it's
addition
both,
to-
so we're
I was
talking
gonna say
about,
in
yes.
addition, okay.
So we've already discussed
Yes.
that that would be one of our growth
Yes.
positions, but we're also saying that we would also like to add a teaching assistant at each of the schools. And so that's why you see
And so what you're saying is if this computer time is what will be determined is if it's in class or if it's within the library.
In the library, and so
wherever-
lots of
depending on-
flexibility for the
sure.
school of how they want to implement it, how they fit it into their
And
schedule.
by each grade, they have that flexibility.
And we really want to make it a coordinated effort across the district so that we're consistent in what we've planned for our
Correct.
students in kindergarten, first, second, third, and fourth, fifth
Correct.
grade.
But you can see and there may be some tweaks
Sure.
when the school gets digging into this, but this is, we've talked to Ms. Price, this is really close to what they're going to run for each of those. Also having that additional teaching position that we're talking about with growth and also this computer position, it allows us that if she has to go to 9 sections in certain grade levels, which may be a possibility, that we have that flexibility too, because otherwise we would be
And this-
redoing the
Behind
entire
the-
map schedule once school has started. That,
No, I'm with you. I think
yes.
that's perfect.
And this will allow too for them to have a block time if they need to do PLCs
that's right.
and,
Very
and
important.
meet as grade level teachers, et cetera.
And is this, you mentioned y'all done this at Riverdale, is this very similar at Farmington as well?
Yes.
Okay.
So Farmington, because we haven't moved forward with having the computer assistants, we don't have their schedule added with this in. They have common planning time already built into their schedule. They had it last year, so they can just kind of adjust for this coming year.
Okay.
But yes, it's very similar. So all of the schools at this point, elementary schools, will have an overall spreadsheet that shows every teacher for maps, all of their schedules, but then also the individual tables that show each section. So each one of these on the side is a section of kindergarten or one class. So eventually when we have teacher names assigned to those sections, we could put them here. And then you can see where everybody is throughout the week.
And is this, the PE not having the same every week, is that an issue, or just we feel good that we're covering that
Yes,
requirement?
because if you look at it, they're getting 55 minutes a week. We still have the recess that they get every single day.
And so that, because that counts, and it's more than the 15?
Yes.
Okay.
So we are,
We're
this is a
well
rich,
covered by
this is
that. Okay.
very
Well,
rich.
I just wanna make sure. Okay.
It's much more than they were getting last year. Like I said, this is
I think this
this is
is
gonna be a
55
great,
minutes is a really, that's
great map
huge.
schedule.
That's huge. Great job. I know it's a lot of work, but
Yes.
very, very nicely done.
Yes.
we finally got it.
Yeah.
But you can see it.
You can figure out the puzzle now.
The
right?
puzzle, yes. So.
It's these pages that help you figure out the puzzle the
Right,
best.
right.
So that's why when we finally finished this puzzle today and realized that this was the best way to solve this without reducing, because the other options that we have here are, if we didn't have that computer option, reducing the number of PE courses that we have available for students, or increasing other sections that don't provide those computer skills.
So we need to add
So
this
what you
budget
see,
amendment.
so what you see is this budget amendment would, be that's our request that last minute we added today.
Okay.
Three new
would-
assistants.
Would be to add this for that. We wouldn't be, in this if we had a July meeting, we wouldn't be discussing it.
Coming from the general fund.
Yes. And it's coming from the increase that we've seen from the BEP.
That's, okay, that's what I
dollars.
thought I had seen, and then also, but this is not impacting what we had as, because we had put additional positions in our budget
Right.
as we need them, because we feel like if we have
If
growth
we have
numbers
growth,
more than, so we
it-
don't wanna touch those, that's why
Yes.
we're putting them in addition.
It-
Okay, so
Yes,
sure.
the teaching assistants, but it does, like we said at Dogwood, we are
We have that
saying
one.
that we are taking
Right.
one,
Mhm.
because we know that, and we had talked about that at
Right,
the budget
right,
time.
right, no, I think that's,
And our latest BEP estimate was added an additional $129,000.
in addition to this 88, or?
The 88 was.
Yeah, so we have 129,000 already projected for our BEP that's above what we've already budgeted.
Okay.
And so that's, our request is to use 89,000 of that 129,000 for this computer teaching assistant.
And so we'll add this as 10H.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
And then we can get to, Ms. Jones, you had other budget questions for Mr. Thank you, Dr. Parker.
No, thank you very much.
I think it's helpful for y'all to see
No, that's perfect.
the scheduling game.
Thank you.
Um,
There were several, I know, did you want to go through each of these, or did you just want to pick out?
Yeah, I mean, if you want, some of them were just asking a little bit more detail, so if you just want to maybe just give us a quick little snippet of.
Sure.
That way,
Yeah, that might answer.
everybody's questions.
Page 3 in the written narrative.
Mhm.
just adding the new position that was grant funded, I believe you guys approved the grant at your
Yes,
last meeting.
okay.
And also that'll show on page 25 for the salaries, adding the teaching assistant.
So-
Page,
Was that
So
for
the
the,
grant
was that for the
funded-
case manager you're referring to and the,
But it looks like it's in addition to the case manager, because if you look on page 3, there's the high school transition case manager, right?
right, that was
And-
already budgeted.
That's right, and then there's this workplace readiness assistant, which we had talked about needing.
Right.
Yes,
Um,
so the
but I-
grant that we got paid for more than just the case
And
manager.
that, okay, that's what I was, so
Yes.
that, it's the same grant that we're talking about, we're
Yes.
just talking about what we're gonna do with that money
Correct.
that we're receiving. and
That's
how we're
correct.
splitting it up.
yes.
So they're giving us that one coordinator position we talked about and also the assistant position.
Okay, so this is not being paid for in theory out of our revenue because we're
Correct.
getting the grant.
Right,
Is
it's
that-
replacing the grant
Yes.
dollars.
Okay, that's what I thought, okay.
And we talked about, yeah, and we
Right,
talked
right.
about,
Use it for something.
yeah,
Sure.
yeah, and talked about setting those funds
Aside.
aside in case we don't get the grant in the future.
Okay.
So-
Okay, that's great.
Will you be adding the 3 educational assistants to this as well?
It's actually going to be a budget amendment, so
Right.
this
Okay.
is the budget, and our very first amendment is going to be for those
Okay, okay.
3 assistants.
Got it.
Next was the projected
Page
tuition.
9, yes, based upon information from student services, we increased the projected tuition. We've about 9 students.
So we do charge tuition for out of county?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay. And how much is that?
It's the portion, it's around.
80,
48.
yeah. 46. So we charge what the county would pay.
And in most cases, these are people who are, they come in through one of the priorities. So either they've come in through an honors academy or a leadership academy, or their staff, or, they fit one of the priority categories. And it's limited, I think, what'd you say, 9?
Do we anticipate seeing that increase? I mean, it is a substantial increase from last year, but is that
It's-
something that?
It's, I would not say that it's going to increase. I think it's always going to be a very small percentage because we do want to get to the point where we have very few transfers that are coming into the
Right, so just dictate
district. So
what's-
it's going to be a case by
what we
case.
can handle.
Yes.
Okay.
Page 9 is adding the revenue for the grant that you just approved at your last.
Or 12, excuse me. Page 9 was the
Page 12,
tuition.
yeah, page 12.
Page 12 is the new
Yeah.
sped
Which is
grant.
that other state education,
Yes.
and that's, and
Those
that's that
dollars are
grant.
coming from Tennessee Department of
Okay.
Education. Page 28 is the increase in district office rent. It was increased by 2%. Page 30, additional software costs. We're looking at doing some additional conversions from Apex to Skyward to where hopefully Skyward will be complete going back to July 1, 2014 to the extent that we can. And then we're going to keep Apex a little bit longer to do the conversions as well as prepare for water.
So it's going to cost additional money to hold on to Apex longer. Instead of
Longer,
shutting
okay.
Apex down, finance would like to keep it up and running longer so that we can pull as much data as possible, so that we have all the data in Skyward instead of shutting it down and losing the data.
Right. And then we get to prepare for audit and Apex.
Okay. And then that would be anticipating that we would not need that going forward.
Correct.
Okay.
And I think it's paying through what, keeping it up through December?
Yeah, through the end of December. On page 37, the additional remaining amount was added to architect fees to help.
And is that anticipating additional fees for what we'll be talking about for central office, or is that something that would be an amendment? How does
For
that?
which one?
The architect fee, we just, to balance the budget, we pushed
That's
it
for
to architect
the new
fees.
school.
Yeah, that's the,
Architect fees for the new school.
Right, that, since we're gonna be talking about the central office, is that something that?
That would be additional that we would
In
have to, that
addition.
does not, yes, so that does not include, and we'll talk about central
Okay,
office.
okay, that's okay, I didn't, I
Yes.
just saw it go up and I didn't know if we were anticipating that, so that's just,
Just in
just a,
school.
Yeah, that's just new school fees.
And that is it for the general fund.
The preschool discretionary grant of the 44,000 on page 39, is that, I'm just trying, is that number was lower than total state education? I'm just trying, I was just getting
This is
myself a bit
actually-
confused.
This is new. This is another preschool program that's funded by the Tennessee Department of Education. It's a new allocation that we just received a couple weeks ago.
But is that a part of the other state education revenue line item? Or is this
This is going to be federal.
federal funds? Okay, so straight in the federal funds, okay.
So the program exists, it's just additional funding to help
Additional
support that
funding.
program.
And then what, on the next page is what we're gonna use that money for?
Exactly.
Got it.
Ms. Huffman pursued the funding and we were awarded the
Perfect, okay,
allocation.
great.
So she's just out
Yeah,
there.
she's, I love it. I love
Checking
it. There's
job
a lot
to
of
get us
money
more
out there
money,
to
yes.
find. It's kinda like scholarships, you just have to
Yes.
know where to look and who to ask.
Keep asking for
Great job,
grants.
yeah, great job.
And on page 46, based upon updated numbers for receiving for capital projects from the county commission, that has been reduced to right at 955,000.
And how does that relate to what we had seen as, this is an adjustment for this budget that was just passed?
Yes.
And then how does that relate to the new funding that they might be getting for new schools? Is that two separate pots?
It
right?
is, well,
Okay.
this includes that, so, this, their current request this year, we're dependent on Shelby County Schools'
Right.
request for capital funds, so their amount of money, I don't remember the total amount, but it was 24,000 or.
It was much less than we
It was
anticipated.
much less than we anticipated.
Okay.
So that was their final request, and so we got our approximately 4%.
It was like 23 something.
Yeah,
So this is just a direct reflection of the fact that we thought that they would be asking.
they were,
for
yes.
more.
And originally, I think they were.
had, absolutely, absolutely, okay,
And we will physically receive this money by June 30th of this year.
okay.
This is appropriating the dollars to be spent for next year.
Thank you.
So, that's one thing that when the board we have our deferred maintenance list that Mr. Cathy uses those
Mhm.
funds to
Mhm.
hit the next big item, whether it's HVACs, roofs, painting, he uses that funding for our capital improvement list.
And I know that we had some bigger things. I mean, is this an impact, or do we feel concerned at all? And that we had the bigger projects at Houston High School, is this
It does not
reduction
impact,
going
it does
to-
not impact our current projects that we
Okay.
have going on
Okay.
right now, but it
Okay.
does.
Eventually, yeah.
Yeah,
eventually,
it limits what we can do
Do
next year.
next year.
Next summer.
Okay. But it's, okay, so we're all sort of, okay.
Yeah, no, we have the funds for what we're doing
Yes.
now. Any more questions
These are all the changes.
on the changes for the 2017-18 general fund budget? And again, we've added to the to the board session, the budget amendment for the 3 educational assistants.
Okay. Only request is when we finally pass it and it's cleaned up for the final time, we get it one last clean copy.
Most definitely.
Sure.
Well, and so that's the question. So is this is this amendment that we have here that has the new assistance?
Mhm.
Is this a true amendment, or is it that we're gonna revise our budget?
It is my intention that this is a true amendment, Mr. Jones, unless you think otherwise. This would be our.
And I just want to make sure we're clear. So what we received here with these changes.
Yes.
Would be considered the final.
That's right.
And so then.
And the reason we say that is if you look at all the things that had been changed, these were things outside of our control or discretion. Either they were grants that we received, funding changes that from our different funding bodies that changed. But this one, the teaching positions, that's a board issue or control. So I felt it's better that this is a budget amendment saying, this is our first thing that we want to change this
Okay.
different.
We're going to approve it on 10E, and then on 10H, we're going to
Amend it. Okay, that's what I thought. I just want to make sure.
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Any other questions on the general fund budget for
Well,
Mr.
well,
Jones.
and just to make sure, just to what Betsy had said, is because this one, that we got on the May 15th said, second and final reading.
Yes.
So if we could get this republished.
It does.
That'd be great, so that it says this date and all of that.
We
so
do.
We're good to go, that'd be awesome. Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay. Next on the agenda is the 2017-18 Federal Capital Cafeteria Health Insurance and OPEB budget.
And
It's
we've
a
already
mouthful.
covered that.
We've covered everything? Okay, great. Next is Central Office Lease Agreement.
So glad you sent us that. I had to get a microphone.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
I think the,
Did you have to get out a magnifying glass?
Yes. I printed it off thinking I'll read it better. No, no such thing.
so when we look at the lease agreement, our lease did go up another 2% again. You can see it was one of the items that was, I'm trying to find the page number exactly, it was under superintendent. Mr. Jones, what page was the lease agreement included on?
Oh, the amount?
I wanted them to see the 3 years of what we were looking, oh,
Page 28.
on page 28 of your budget,
Gotcha.
where it's listed under, and you can see it's actually highlighted there, and it's under the Office of Superintendent. We have gone from $132,000 a year for our central office space, and it went up to $152,000, and now it's gone up to $155,000 a year in lease payments. And this is something we've talked about in the past, that, of course, I say that we approved that for this year, and we need the office space to work. So we're asking your approval for that. But I think one of the items that we need to discuss, which is item number 10, is after we approve that lease, that we go ahead and discuss what our permanent solution for central office space. The amount of money that we are spending yearly on lease payments, if we did a one-time construction of the central office space, that money goes straight back into regular instruction at that point. So we can use that money for a lot of other items.
And so, are you talking about constructing at the
Yes, so one of the,
Brower Schaefer site?
yes, at the Brower Shaver site, one of the things that we had discussed was if we're building a new school there, and as we're talking to A2H, it's our architect firm, that if they're doing the plumbing, the electrical, all the groundwork on this site, it is much more cost efficient for us to go ahead and do the central office in one swoop. It would be my request to the board to pay for it out of our reserve. And then after this, once it opens, this money then rolls back into our accounts.
And what kind of costs are we looking at to build a?
So that's the discussion for this board. So the only thing that we would be asking tonight is to go ahead and start the process. We would ask that the board approve A2H again because they're doing the same project. They're doing the school on the site. It would not make sense to have another architect firm who's also in there making plans and looking at that. So the only request for this body tonight, because once again, we're gonna have a whole bunch of steps to get your approval on, would be for us to use A2H to start the contract for them to do the design process, and then we can come up with the square footage that we need, and then we start doing the budget calculations. And so after we do the contract with them, the next step we would bring to the board would be, here's our proposed central office. We would ask for you to approve, to spend the money for that building, so.
How much is the design process going to cost?
We have not had that discussion with A2H. I would hope that they would do the same 6% that we are using for our current project, but I can't say that for sure.
would hope
But
so.
I'm guessing somewhere around 6%.
And so ballpark, that would be, I mean, any idea?
It depends. So my guess is that I know that Arlington is building a central office now, and I think they're looking at a $2.5 million project. And so I would say that we would be looking at something comparable to that. But I don't want to say a number because
Oh, no, no.
we
I'm
don't have
just
square footage.
trying
But
to get a range for the fee.
yes,
that we would
oh,
be
the fee.
saying.
So what you would look at is a 6%, and 6% is standard because we're doing the engineering for them. It's actually lower than the going rate because we've used them for other projects. So you're not going to find an architect firm that is going to do lower than 6%.
Doubtful. It makes perfect sense to do it in conjunction because when we're starting to really look at traffic patterns.
Yes.
And how we're pulling the traffic in off of Forest Hill, having a central office, and I know in our last meeting, we talked about
Where it
possibly
could be.
doing it north,
And we'll show
Of
you
the
that
school,
tonight too.
yeah.
We're potential sites for it.
doing it possibly north of the building, then it will affect how you think about bringing traffic in and out.
The only thing I would say is that's about $150,000. And so if we say go ahead, I just would feel a little bit better about knowing, if it's 2.5 million, let's just say, do we feel comfortable that that's an amount that we would feel comfortable with reducing our reserves and that we could cover that before, because that's a year's worth of lease payments. Is basically when I think of, that design fee. Long-term, it makes sense, but could we at any point decide after we've agreed to spend that kind of money that it would not be cost-effective for us to do this?
The way and that'll be another thing that this board also has to approve is the contract for this. So we will be bringing
Okay.
the contract before this
Okay, so
board
that
also.
isn't what you're asking for
That's not what we're
approval
asking.
tonight.
We're just,
Okay,
so
okay,
first step,
okay.
we're saying, go ahead, recognize A2H. Next
Okay.
step, we'll bring the contract to you and say,
Perfect.
here are the
Okay.
amounts, here's
Okay.
what it's gonna be.
Okay.
Then next step after that would be, here's the square footage, here's what we're asking you to spend. And the way that we've structured these in the past, especially with this new school, is it's all dependent upon the funding. So when we make the contract, we have stoppage points along the way to say that if the board decides that they're not gonna do it by this point, we would know we would be on the hook for X amount of dollars. It wouldn't be the full
And that
six.
would be spelled out in the contract?
And that's spelled out.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Other questions on central office? We had looked at the house that was on the same property too. That was one thing that we did do, our due diligence. But when we looked at the probable cost of purchasing the house, and we looked at what we would have to do to the house, essentially, we would have to gut the house. We would have to add elevators. We would have to add sprinkler systems because it becomes commercial. It was cheaper just to build the central office on the property that we already own.
From scratch, yeah.
From scratch.
Usually.
And have it the way that we need it versus trying to make it fit,
Yeah, that's your call.
even though it was a beautiful house.
It was a beautiful house. You're right, it was a beautiful house. Any other questions on central office construction?
So we really have two. First is request for the lease, and the second is
Is-
for A2H.
Is there anything in the lease that you perceive as a potential issue if we do move this farm? I mean, you feel good
No.
about our outages?
We're just a,
and all that? I mean, I
yeah,
didn't
we're a
see
year-to-year
anything,
lease
but-
right now, and they have been
Yeah, 'cause
very
that
good
was all-
landlords.
that was all
Yeah,
deleted.
mhm.
Yeah.
So they've been very good to us.
Okay,
They
great.
actually allow us to have additional
Yeah.
space that they're not using right now,
Okay.
where the HR department currently is. So
Right, right.
they're very flexible with
Okay.
us. It's just the whole issue of lease versus buying and
Sure.
the potential savings that we have for the district.
Okay.
And we're out of space too.
Yeah.
We have no more room to add the people that we need to.
Okay, I guess, Mr. Haddo, we'll go ahead and, we added you to the end with the hopes that Ms. Parker would be here.
Sounds like you're gonna be one.
So we're gonna, Mr. Haddo's going to talk about policy on fringe benefits.
Thank you.
If you look just simply at the handout, not the, what's been posted on the site, I'll give you a big picture explanation, is, if you recall correctly, this had been debated with our attorney, one, and then here, there's some questions that came up, with the insurance companies as well. So if you just look at the handouts, you're gonna see a couple tweaks on the policy. But I think the sole purpose is to compare A and B. If you want to jump to that and then come back to the big picture, we can do that as well.
Okay, so we're looking at this.
You're looking at this? Yes, thank you, Betsy. You're looking at the draft color-coded policy.
This one?
Okay.
Yep.
But
And
that's
so it's-
not,
That's not
that's not
this.
the policy.
No, that's for me that's superintendent's report that you.
Okay, sorry, okay. I'll put that.
So to put in the, yeah, there's a packet and, oh, you got lots of information there. You're looking at this right now. So it
I know,
says,
I'm looking for something else. I mean, I knew what I was
okay.
looking.
And then with that, just know the adjustment from what was posted on
That's what my question was.
the board portal worksite was 5 days ago. And since that 5 days has expired, the lawyer and I have been talking about different terms. Correct, correct. Correct. Actually, no, Suzanne, the one that you have, the policy that you have in front of you, depending on where you got that. Yes, this is, if you look at this draft coded one, the one that's attached to your meeting, disregard for right now. Because that has changed, but the one in your handout, that's the one we're going with.
This will be put into this format
Correct.
as the policy.
Correct, yep. So for,
Because you met with the lawyer, because you met.
so, yes, made some changes to it. And that's within the last 5 days. So this will be our working copy of what we're going with. And if you look at the small picture is what you're really trying to do, and I'll refresh your memory, is you're looking at page 5. And that was Plan A. And with Plan A, if you look at the very top, where it says Roman numeral 4, that came from Nyhart Actuary. And there were so many plans at the time that the committee went through that they called it HCA Tier 1 Post-65 stipend, add Tier 2 Post-65 life. The cost, bless you, the estimated cost on that for the yearly fee, the actual amount, was $793,000. So that's what we would give every year to fund this for this plan. And then if you go down and if you look at Tier 1, it has the prerequisites, the health benefit, the retiree life insurance, and the Medicare stipend. So you're really looking at 3 benefit pieces that the retiree is going to get, depending on which tier they're in. So if you look at what I did is, if you look at the benefit, if you think green go, that's a favorable let's go in this tier. So that, if you look at the green, just note for that Tier 1, that benefit was in discussion, what to do with the post-65 life insurance benefit. And I may pause just for a minute and digress. Benefits really come to life when tragedy happens. We lost a teacher's aide yesterday, she died. And I had the conversation with her beneficiary, which is her husband. And that's always a hard conversation. Now, she was inactive, of course. So it dawned on me, hey, this, really, when it comes to life, hey, here we are. So if you look at that post-65 years of benefit, what may be sacrificed, depending on which plan you choose, is that $50,000 benefit for someone 65 and older. Do we have those people currently in our system? Yes. Do we currently have people working in our system past the age of 65? Yes. So that's something to consider. One thing, though, and I'm staying with that Tier 1, if you go to the red, we'll receive a monthly stipend. That stipend right now, the current retiree had a choice, to refresh your memory. They could go to a Medicare supplement insurance to offset the cost for Medicare A and Medicare B and possibly Medicare D, if I know my Medicare, which I'm not too familiar with, but it's an additional benefit to help with the cost, which Medicare does not to cover. With that stipend, though, note throughout all this, whether it be Plan A or Plan B, that Aetna supplement is going away for anyone that retires from this point forward when this policy changes. So as you go through that, just know when you look at Tier 2, and I can go if you want me to continue with this, I'll be glad to, just for clarity.
Let me jump in so I can talk about the differences between the two.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, go
though?
ahead.
This right here, what you're going over, this has not changed. Has this changed from what we talked about?
No,
Thank you.
just-
That's what I
nothing's
wanted to know.
changed.
That's
Yes.
what I just wanted to know.
It's
That-
visually, it's
that-
visually supposed to show you.
That's fine, that's what I want to know. The
Yes.
information is still the
The
same.
same,
That's
yes.
okay.
So what we had talked about really was the difference between Plan A and Plan B.
Okay.
And so I'd really,
So
so
that
I want
has-
to put down,
that
that's
has
the
not-
green and the
yes.
red in each.
But it has not, that has not
Yes,
changed.
that has
Correct.
That's okay.
Correct.
So
So-
from
That
when
helps
we
us.
looked at this, it's the identical.
Yes.
from when
Yes.
we-
Thank you.
I'm just
That's-
refreshing your memory right
Thank
now
you.
and
That's-
showing you how it
I
looks
think
like.
that clarifies
Yes.
So I'll explain
everything for
some
us.
key differences. So what we're talking about are OPEB benefits, so those are health insurance benefits or life insurance benefits that retirees can take into their retirement. And so what we decided as a committee was that we were going to look at our staff, at our population of employees in 3 different tiers of individuals. The people who are 10 years from retirement so that they've got time to plan, or they don't have time to plan before their retirement, that's not a long time, to save for changes. We really wanted to do something that was keeping their current benefits intact. Then we've got a middle tier of individuals, those people who have, who are probably 20 years from retirement if they're at the low end of it. And then you've got the bottom tier, which are people who've been with the district for less than 10 years. So those are your 3 tiers of employees. The difference between Plan A and Plan B, and I think is really simple. One, Plan A provides life insurance for those employees when they're in retirement. It gives in Tier 2 benefits, in Tier 1 and Tier 2, they carry the same benefits that we have now. That is not a change. But this is the bad thing that Mr. Hatta was saying. The red area is here. This is the one thing that would change. For those Tier 2 employees, so those are the people who are years 10 to 19, they would not be able to carry their spouses on their coverage with them, which we currently have. So that's one thing that is really a negative part of Tier A. Their spouses would get a stipend instead of being on the health insurance, so that's why it's in red. But the good thing is, they have the life insurance component. When we look at B, Plan B, the difference was those same two things again, and so that's why, that's this back chart, so you can see both, so that when the board approves it, you can see the difference. So the one thing that goes away in B is we no longer have that life insurance benefit for people who are post 65, after 65. But you can see the good thing here is they get to carry their spouses on their health insurance with them. So that's the real big differences between Plan A and Plan B. Plan A is the life insurance post 65. Plan B is, can you carry your spouses on your health insurance with you?
And I think our question was, from the last meeting that we had, was can on Plan B, can an employee paying themselves continue that life insurance?
Okay, go to the handout I just gave you.
And so
And
here's
what
the
you
answer
see-
to that question.
And if I understood the question, this, Dearborn is going to be our new life insurance carrier starting July 1st.
Okay.
And I, not to, just recall your memory, I sent you some handouts, a table chart, and a conversion, and an FAQ, probably about a week ago, not that you have to pull that up. But I recaptured my conversation by email with the Dearborn implementation coordinator. His name's James Micus. So what you see on that is kind of the conversation. So we're, talking back and forth, and hey, thanks for your patience here, because I asked the question about the sample that you're going to see. And basically the answer is kind of. It's a conversion. So Dan is now 65. And Dan has now said, hey, you can convert your life insurance benefit to Dearborn if you follow this formula, the table rates tied into the formula, tied into another fee. And it was going to be at that cost that you see down in the first yellow highlighted, the annual fee of $3,209 to get a $50,000 life insurance. And now that's a different type that's an original life insurance. That means it's an investment as well. It's not a term life insurance. So Dan's little mind went to, golly, I wonder what a term life insurance would cost to $50,000. And simply what I did is if you look at the comparative with MetLife, that would be the comparative. So if you wanted a term life for 10 years, that's what Dan would be paying annually at the age of 65. Since then, I have reached out to Shoemaker Financial Services. I did not ask the right question. They gave me a $750,000 life insurance. They must have thought that I had big money. But that conversion was about $6,000 to do that for a year. I've also did a hypo, sample to AARP. I've not heard back from them yet through email. But if you look at the,
make it real short. To answer y'all's question, yes, our employees can get their own insurance that we can help put them in touch with Dearborn. But the caveat is it costs.
Yeah.
It's
so-
now, yes,
but-
yes.
Yes,
Correct.
but well, they're showing you the rate.
Right,
So-
but it's not,
Right.
it's not the same rate that we are paying.
That's
as an
correct.
On their
employer,
behalf.
right,
On their behalf.
right.
So the two examples that Mr. Hatto has provided is two different types of insurance, and he talked about the one that's an investment. So you're talking about a range from $1,600 to $3,200 for life insurance that our employees would then have to pick up.
32 seems high.
Okay.
That's
Now,
probably whole, isn't it?
But here's,
It's
you know,
not term.
I'm
It's not
biased-
term, it's original.
I'm
So
biased
there's an
towards
investment
Plan
piece there too.
B.
So you're making an investment on it.
Your
So
investment's
here's what I'm
whole.
saying, I'm biased towards Plan B because when I think about my wife and getting insurance for her, getting health insurance for my wife on the open market is going to be a lot more expensive than $3,200, which is even the lowest here. So I think when we're talking about providing the most benefit to our employees, that's why I favor that second Plan B plan.
I want to make another point of emphasis on this. If you look at the policy handout that you just referred to, under the specifications, I don't know if I made this clear, but any new hire, any new employee hired after, for the school year beginning July 1st, 2017 or thereafter, they will not be provided any type of post-health retirement benefit. So we're talking about 3 tiers, and those 3 tiers, after we've saved enough in our account to cover the cost of this OPEB benefit, and they all roll off, there probably should be some additional funding to repurpose somewhere else later down the road in the GMSD life. So that's 1. 2 is this bounce back provision. Is the bounce back provision, and this is where the policies change within the 5 days. Brittany Sprawling, who you may or may not remember, she's our consultant, and she's up in Nashville, and she works for Bob Shoup and ESP. Deborah Owen, the attorney, said, hey, Dan, you may want to check what that looks like, what this bounce back provision is going to look like for your reinsurer. And there was a bit of an interesting learning curve. The reinsurer for us, because we're self-insured, is the catastrophic stop-loss insurance. So what she recommended was that health questionnaire. Dan leaves, goes get a job in Upper Arlington, Columbus, Ohio. Dan bounces back. The only caveat to that would be is Dan's expected to fill out a health questionnaire. And that health questionnaire is probably to help the catastrophic premium that could or could not go out based on, hey, did Dan come back with cancer or a heart condition or heart? So be that. Those are some other little specific little, hey, Dan, we never talked about that. That's what I mean by, hey, this thing's changed within the 5 days. The other change that you may or may not see that I've not run by Deborah said in the former policy, and this is really going to get into the weeds, there was some language in there about the internal accounting manual that she couldn't figure out why it was in there. And she couldn't figure out the piece on the disability, permanent disability, what it looks like, how you can bounce back on it. Simply what I did is I looked at some other local school districts, looked at their language, copied it, and put it in here. And so there's a couple things in that first policy that you see posted that you're going to think, hey, this just changed, and it's because of her recommendation. And if the other municipalities already approved their language and vetted through the attorney, I took that language and replaced it. And I'll show you where that is precisely if you look at page 6. And if you look at the last 2 bullets on page 6, those will be new bullets to you. High tech is under the Affordable Care Act, and high tech is from my limited impression, it is a reporting mechanism because the country is now looking at population health, and they're trying to manage population health by collecting health information on people. Just know it's got to be really private if high tech gets involved and we send them information on our employees. So it's kind of like HIPAA with some privacy rights. So those 2 bullets would be some new bullets that were not, so if you're comparing the 2 from 5 days ago with this, those 2 bullets have changed since. Yes.
Question on the bounce back. You said they may have to fill out a form. If they do fill out and say they have cancer, will we not take them back?
We will take them back, but that's where that catastrophic insurance, since they're reinsuring us,
Yeah.
it may cost us a little bit more on those premiums. But my thought was, and my thought may be really simplistic, is it's kind of a moot point because we're going to have them either way. What we're really trying to save is the claims while they're currently working. So we're trying to have someone else pick up those claims.
I have a question. Because there's such distinct differences. So, and I know you gave us these facts when we had our last work session, but rather than me digging through the file, I'm gonna ask you, what are the numbers that are gonna be affected?
I have to look at the tiers from that. It's going to take me a minute to pull up.
Oh, you put the.
Yeah, I put it on that other document that we went over on the 12th.
On that one that
It may be 100 to 120 to
And then
90.
274, the last one?
Yes.
274.
That's the one from last time.
Yeah,
Yes.
she had it on.
Yep.
there.
Yeah, the
Okay.
numbers were at the
First
top of.
page,
Yeah.
you go, it's like,
I wasn't gonna do
just on the
that.
very bottom.
Yeah.
I think my point on that was, I think I made the statement, I think I call it situational ethics, but I think it should have been utilitarian ethics. The majority of people that
Oh,
work for us
105,
fall in tier 2 and
156.
tier 3.
Okay.
Did you find it?
No, she-
No,
105.
I've got it.
Okay.
I was just.
I mean, but I think that's good to know, is that we're talking about tier 1 has about 100 employees, tier 2 has about 150-ish,
Yeah.
and then the rest are in tier 3, right? So I mean, if
Yes.
you're talking about the impact, to your point, when you look at this, the tier 2 has, when you look at the 2 different plans, there's a difference there, for, what I would say, the majority of our employees that we're talking about.
Right.
One thing, just to make sure that I'm clear on this and that we put it out there, is that what our conversation has been so far
Yes,
That's a very valid, you want to
I'll be
summarize
glad to do that.
Okay,
So
yeah.
if we're talking about Tier A, for example,
Right.
the one thing that would change is for Tier 2 people who are, have a spouse that is going to, when they're getting ready to retirement, we would not be covering their spouses on our health insurance plan. We would be giving them money, and then I think it was $300 to go out and buy insurance, but that, that's a drop in the bucket for what they would have. If we're talking about Plan B, the difference, there is no difference for those Tier A people except for the stipend, the secondary Medicare insurance that we have. It's just whether we're giving them,
And life insurance potentially.
Life insurance.
Right.
Because the change, the numeric change, because it's max of 300,000.
Right.
If you're active versus going to 50,000.
That's
You
right.
can always find more, but what we pay for.
that's correct. So the difference in Plan B is for those people who are in that Tier 2, we would no longer be offering that life insurance. They would have to get, and we found that they could get that on their own. They would be paying for it, a range from $1,600 to $3,200. But they would be able to carry their spouses on their health insurance. So I think that's a much bigger benefit.
Right, but then tier 3.
Tier 3 does have a dramatic change for those people. Instead of them being carried on our health insurance in retirement, they would be given a stipend to help them pay for insurance on the open market. So that would be the difference.
And then anyone who's new.
Yes.
From this
Would
point
not.
on to the point you made, there will be
Would
no
not.
post-retirement.
And I think that the other districts that we've talked to, they have cut that to, when you look at most districts across the state, they do not provide health insurance benefits in retirement because most of those districts are on the state plans,
Right.
which they have high deductibles. They're not as rich as our plans are. The reason we have to do this is it's not sustainable otherwise.
Right.
We would get to a point where we would be like municipalities like Detroit, where all of a sudden they're saying, we don't have the money to pay for your health insurance to our people who are already retired in our district.
Right.
By doing this, we are funding the full amount as we go, so we're looking at 830 to, I think, 790,000 were the ranges between plans A and Plan B. So we can guarantee our employees in retirement that you are gonna have this benefit.
Right.
If we didn't do that, this would not be sustainable. What would happen is, we would have people, and like I said, 15 years from now, 20 years from now, we'd say, we don't have enough money to pay for your benefits.
Or we're not hiring teachers. because
That's
we don't
right.
have the money
All of a
to
sudden, we
cover
see
that.
impact on instruction.
Have the other districts in the other municipalities in our area made any decisions?
Yes, the challenge is for most of those districts, they have shut the door. So new hires are not getting those benefits in retirement. They are going to continue their benefits for all of their current employees into retirement. The difference with the other municipalities, they are paying as they go, which means they are not fully funding their OPEB liabilities. They are just paying the benefits for their current retirees. So for example, in a lot of districts that are comparable in our size, they're talking about a $200,000 investment for OPEB, where we're putting in $830,000 to $790,000. So that's a difference that you'll see for us. We are fully funding our OPEB requirements.
So to your point, we are competitive for new hires.
Yes.
Because that's the going.
They have shut
forward.
the door also.
Okay, that's fine.
And one of the things that I really appreciated through the committee work was the talk of spending time and getting investment advisors in to help our teachers think about long-term. That we're not
Correct.
just cutting off and saying, figure it out. We're looking forward to say, over these years,
That's right.
this is how you can start saving, and these are some things that you can do, which would be some of the programs that you would be implementing over the next several years.
Correct.
My question is, do you need a decision tonight?
On Plan A or Plan B?
Yes.
The sooner we have a decision, the sooner we can educate the staff. So there's a placement date in this policy that you have. I think I put September. This policy is in effect on September 1, 2017. Because up until that time, if what I'm worried about, Linda, is I'm worried about, hey, once people see, hey, that this policy is getting ready to change, here comes I'm not only talking maybe less than 5, here comes some resignations. And we may have to fill it. And so if you say, hey, less than 5, how do you know that? And talking to the schools when we went out and talked to them, you saw, hey, that this may impact this particular person if this decision's made. But that's not a big concern, so if you had to say, but the sooner you get the policy done, and the sooner
And
you can
that's
educate.
fine. So I guess
people.
my question is to the board, I just want to make sure everybody feels comfortable, because this is a big decision, and we have been working on this, though, since we opened our doors. I mean, this isn't something that's just come up, but we've been working with investors, we've been working, the OPEB committee has had teachers on it, I mean, it's been a long process. But I also,
Yes.
it's also a big decision, and I want to make sure that, that the board feels comfortable at this point in making a decision.
One of the things that a couple of things, is first I would say that, or ask, is there an issue if we don't change our policy by July 1, that in theory we have to change the date of the retirement? Like, how are contracts
Yeah.
being worded for any new teachers that we're bringing on?
I think that's, you have a very good point. That's one of our challenges, that if we don't address this policy tonight, then one of the issues that we talked about during this whole process with legal counsel was that if we do something retroactive, it would be bad to have employees that come onto the district and say, and have a date out there that was,
Yeah.
like, let's say, a July date, that's when you started your hire, and we've changed the benefits, and, oh, you didn't know it. That's one of the concerns, is that we do have that lag issue. And so for us, it's better, before we start this next batch of new hires, to go ahead and approve that policy and say, here's what's in place.
And I guess, what plan do you feel comfortable with? I mean, you've met with the teachers, you've met with the staff out in the schools, what do you, what?
I concur with Mr. Superintendent Manuel that benefit of having your spouse or your dependent on as an active, that probably has more value than a 65-year-old person who's probably got their investment strategies already set up, where that life insurance may not be that big of a ding. If you look at the, that you can buy life insurance from MetLife for $1,400 a year, $50,000, that doesn't seem to be as detrimental as that active dependent rate. For some reason, I think $300 times 12 is $3,600. I think probably that health insurance, possibly at that time, could be anywhere from $10,000 to, who knows, $15,000 a year on that particular family unit. If you look at our salaries and our people and where they are, you'd have to say that the majority of them are not in that, the last 10 years of their time with GMSD. My only hesitation, my only drawback, and this is the other side of it, is if, we told our people probably way back when we started that we don't want to throw them into a cold shower. We don't want to shock them, and that's why that tier 1 has that range of 10 years or out. In talking to people, schools to school to school to school, no one seemed too terribly under duress at that time. Now, granted, the urgency of the tyranny of the urgent, when that hits, and wait, this is real. Yeah, this is real. But I really do think I concur with Mr. Manuel that I feel that.
And I have to agree with you.
That paying for their spouse's benefits through age 65 is more important or higher priority than paying for life insurance up to $50,000.
Well,
Correct. From a cost benefit analysis, yes.
It would be cheaper for them to buy the life insurance.
Yes.
than it would be
Yeah,
for them to-
correct.
It is. Having a husband who's going to retire in a few months and looking at the same things, Plan B is definitely the more.
So my question is, this is coming before us tonight on first reading. We don't meet again to August. Is this a case where you want us to waive, second reading? Would that be?
Mechanically, what I think needs to happen is it needs to be an official policy. So it'd be me and Ms. Vijaya working on this in between the work session and the board session, getting that up on the site. And yeah, if I don't see it changing, except for that one piece that those last 2 bullets on the general provisions, I threw in there, but to come from some other local municipalities, so they're legally sound, would be my contention. And then we go forward with it, except for that one, maybe Deborah needs to give it one more glance. So first reading, second reading, and that second reading would be August.
But
would be,
to answer your question, I don't think this impacts the employees, because there's no real change at that point. I think the difference is, so I'm not suggesting that we waive the reading.
Okay,
What I'm saying is, if we have done this and said, hey, this is what we're going to do, Mr. Haddock can go out and say, this is what passed on first reading. Our new employees say, this is what they're discussing.
So it doesn't
It's
have
the
to be
information.
official, but it can
It's
be,
the
this is what
information
it's
piece.
going to be.
Yes, but this is
Most
what,
likely.
most likely, this is what's
You
coming.
promise it's not gonna change again.
I've been married too long to keep any promises.
Well,
To answer that question, no, I don't foresee it. As far as the Plan A and the Plan B, no. Those details are the details. As
and
far
it-
as some of the
it-
legalese and the
I mean,
language.
Plan A and Plan B haven't changed since we.
No,
No, it's
no, no,
just
no.
some of
Yeah,
the
it's just some of the
other-
other,
It's just
some of the
some of the
wording that
wording.
has to be clean, possibly cleaned up. So yeah, I'd recommend first reading tonight, and then second reading August. And then first reading, this is what's passed, send that out to the employees, hey, get ready, first reading, and they know that's coming, they expect that to happen for them.
So is there, because if this is a policy that we would say first reading, we agree to, we would need to take one of these plans out of it.
Yes.
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 So would there
Yes.
be any wording within here other than the table?
The
that
chart,
needs to
correct.
change?
Possibly where it defines the tiers.
So I'm
Yes.
just wondering, can we make those changes, to be able
Yes.
to make sure?
Plan A and according to
And
that.
just because it is fairly, I mean, would it be possible for us to get copies or even see it online before we have to approve it, just to make sure we're all clear on what's,
Yes.
Yes.
is that okay?
No, that's her plan.
Okay.
She's gonna have it all online for you.
Once you decide whether you're going to go with Plan A or Plan B, which you want to take to the table.
Do you want to do straw poll so she can type? It's not official.
Yeah, we could do that.
That which doesn't do both?
Yeah.
Yes.
My sense is, and I don't let me speak for you, my sense is, hey, get ready to do the one with the tier 2 with the employees as active. And so we can at least start as that as a starting point, throw that one up there first, and then if something changes in the meeting, then you can.
I would recommend doing what the superintendent recommends,
Mhm.
putting that
Plan B.
policy out, and then
Mhm.
we can talk from that
Yeah.
point,
That would be
if
great.
that's
Plan
okay.
B.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you wanted me to go over any other questions on that, and thanks for your
No.
being
Um,
so open.
But, Mr. Haddo,
Time.
I may have you, since Ms. Parker couldn't make the work session, I may have you give some explanation
Okay.
at
Yep.
our board meeting so
That's
that
not a
you can
problem.
get some of that information that was missed.
And part of it, yeah, that'd be fine. The other, I think you have it in front of you. I know you have a lot in you, but there's a new hire, just a
Yes.
one-form
Yes.
deal.
Yes.
And that's just, these people have been hired recently for 12
Yes, I
months.
saw that.
I think some of you know who they are, some of their
Yes,
names.
I was
Yes,
excited.
some of them are familiar.
Yes, excited about the new vice principal.
Mm-hmm.
I know Dr. Park probably is not, but, well, I'm sure she is, but she isn't.
A blessing and a curse.
Yes.
Losing good people at the central office.
Yes.
To go to the schools is always a challenge, but she's
Yes.
gonna do wonderful things.
And you lost the person at the front desk, but. I'm sure
So if
that's
you're looking at that, what I plan on doing is when the 11th month new staff members come, you're going to see the same type of chart. And obviously, this chart's going to continue to grow because you're going to have 10.5-month employees, and then you're going to have 10-month, which is predominantly the teachers. So when that teacher new hire list gets created, you may see it in a different format. It may just be a quick, these are the new teachers placed at these schools, and what have you. I also plan on, or I am working on it right now, I'm looking at a salary differential chart. This has to be clarified, is we do not hire based on how much a person is going to cost the system. We hire based on principal selection, interview process, recommendations. We make sure that they're contract eligible, and then we go ahead and hire them. But what you're going to see is, hey, who got hired this year? And I want to make sure that you see the cost differential from the incumbent to the new hire, just so you can get a good read on it. But that would be the 10-month. That'll be at the 10-month time, which will be sometime in August, September, more so. So thank you.
Thank you. Just a couple things real quick. Tonight, Kay Williams and Barbara Fletcher from Arlington.
They just walked in?
They'll be here tonight as part of the evaluation of the TSBA Board of Distinction.
Yes.
And I think also in your folders tonight, you have an annual agenda and also all the dates for the next coming year for board meetings.
Jason, would it be possible, and Linda, I don't know, I keep asking this, but I'm gonna ask it again, but just because I think with a new school, anything that we're doing in the fall, as we get closer and we have different contracts, would it be possible just to add a save the date? It doesn't have to be an official meeting, but just that we clear it on our calendar, so we have it if y'all need a date, you know it's saved on our calendar, so that we don't be that, something that Mrs. Supermani sends out, to say, just put these dates on your calendar, because then that way, if you need a special meeting, you don't have to go through and ask.
You want like a generalized save the date?
Yeah, just like for every month, just pick a date, and we don't have to be in the PD room, you know, it wouldn't be here, it would be kind of, just like we've had those work sessions where we've kind of had to have the special meetings to get stuff approved, just so we have it locked on our calendar.
We'll look at
We'll look at it.
We'll look at the calendar and see
See
where it fits. and
if there's a
it's-
need.
It's very helpful that we have them during the day when we have those
Yeah.
special calls.
Yeah.
That's right, and so it doesn't even, and that could be the requirement, is that it's just a noon or
Just a-
1 o'clock
We'll
during the
just look,
day.
we'll look at the calendar and see if there's anything that, coming up that we'll need them for.
And thank you, because of all of my confusion with all the things, I appreciate the changes.
Yes, so hopefully, yeah, that's why we made the two
Mr.
characters
Haddow
color
worked really
coded.
hard.
Right,
Yes.
no, I think that was
Thank
perfect.
you.
And just knowing that we might not know what those things might need to be that we talked about today.
Right.
In November or December. The last thing is, we had mentioned it, one more session before, where we would put on the policies, the date that had been reviewed.
Oh, yes.
Can we, and that could be something we just start like in August, like with the new fiscal year or something, that we just start going forward, but
That's
it
something we
still
can
just
look at.
says review annually in June versus the date that it was reviewed.
So the ones that we have no changes to, that we've reviewed, we just change the date.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like last date reviewed instead of
Yeah.
last revision, just last date reviewed. And it can just be a month and a year, it doesn't have to be the actual,
Date.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you know, just,
Yep.
Okay. We're adjourned. We'll take a couple-minute break and start up. order on June 19th. I'd also like to mention before we begin that Ms. Oaf is on vacation this evening. I'd also like to welcome Ms. Kay Williams and Barbara Fletcher with the Arlington School Board. Welcome. They're here tonight as part of Tennessee School Board Association to do a board evaluation of our board as part of the Board of Distinction with TSBA. So thank you for coming tonight. At this time, I'd like to ask for a moment of silence. I'd like for us to remember Deborah Zintik and her family. Deborah, an educational assistant at Riverdale School since 8/1/2014, died recently. She will be remembered for her patience and kindness in serving K-5 students in a manner that exemplified child friendliness. A moment of silence, please. Thank you. Ms. Landers, could you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Ms. Landers. Next on the agenda is the approval of our agenda. There is one addition to it. There is an addition 10H, which is the 2017-18 Budget Amendment Number 1. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda with this amendment?
I move to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Roll call?
Ms. Landers,
Yes.
Ms. Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Parker,
Yes.
Ms. Fisher.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion has passed. The agenda has been approved. Next, we have our recognition and awards. Superintendent?
Success is a trademark of Houston excellence in all areas, from academics to athletics to arts. For 2 decades, Houston Athletics has cemented its reputation as best of the preps. When it comes to interscholastic athletics, this excellence was especially seen this spring with the athletes that are here tonight. We have a saying in education that you don't get apples from orange trees. I would say that's true for these 2 young men. I've known their father for a long period of time, and he is the best. He made our wrestling program, middle school program at Houston Middle School, and you can tell by the men that he has raised that he's an exceptional man. So this just isn't an award for his children, it's an award for him and his wife too. You've done a great job. In boys track, Colin Jones won the 800-meter dash, giving Houston its 56th individual state title in school history. And teammate Keaton Jones was with arm's reach behind him, and I have a feeling that's the way it is most of their life. They're right there neck and neck. So we would like to congratulate them on their success. And then also our 4x800 relay team also took the state title, and we would like to recognize Colin and Keaton Jones along with Charles Parker and Sora Ba. So if we could have those athletes and also Coach Hamlet and their coaches come up here, y'all have done great things with these students and their athletes, and we appreciate the time that you've invested in them. Stay here. Thank y'all. For our staff recognitions, the HMSTAs is an award show modeled after Broadway's Tony Awards that works to recognize excellence in all areas of musical theater throughout the Mid-South. From the 33 schools participating, shows and performers are nominated for various awards, and in the week preceding the show, come to the Orpheum to put together fantastic displays of talent for the evening. Houston High School garnered 15 nominations, the most of any other Mid-South high school. Win after win, they walked away with the following awards from the star-studded event. Outstanding Featured Dancer, Tim O'Toole from Houston High School. Best Supporting Actress, Sarah Kate Melton from Houston High School. Outstanding Choreography, Leah Beth Bolton from Houston High School. Best Dance Execution, Houston High School. Outstanding Chorus, Houston High School. Outstanding Student Orchestra, Houston High School. And the Outstanding Overall Production, 42nd Street from Houston High School. It was a truly incredible celebratory night, and we at GMSD are so proud of the work by theater teacher and director of the production, Miss Kel Christie. So we'd like to recognize her tonight for all the hours she did. And since she's got a supporting cast here tonight, we'd also like to have all of the students who participated in 42nd Street to come up here with her. And that concludes our student and staff recognitions.
And those of you may leave if you'd like, if you don't want to stay for the rest of the meeting. Thank you for coming tonight. Next on our agenda is approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I move to approve the minutes from the May 15th, 2017 board meeting and the May 31st, 2017 special called board meeting.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Ms. Landers?
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion is passed. Next on the agenda is the reports. TLN update, Ms. Jones?
Yes, thank you. First, I would like to give a congratulations shout out to Kevin Vaughn, who won he's on the Collierville School Board, and he won the 95th District House seat for representatives for the state of Tennessee. So that was a special called election, and there's a lot of work in a short period of time, so congratulations to him. We will be working, really the biggest update I had mentioned last time was about the vouchers not passing, which was a huge one for us, but to keep it on our radar as we move through the fall, because it is sitting in subcommittee and finance, and so it will not have to pass as many steps, so we need to make sure that we have our voices together. We will be working with our other municipalities to pull together a August, September type meeting where we can get the legislators together to talk about the upcoming session and what our views are on things such as vouchers, testing, and any of the items in BEP that we could go ahead and maybe try and get targeted for the budget. The session, believe it or not, will start before we know it, which will be January 9th, 2018. And so it will reconvene on January 9th. There were no other items that I have to update on.
Thank you, Ms. Jones.
Thank you.
Next is the chairman's report. I'd just like to say as we wind up the school fiscal year, several of our board members participated in the 2017 TSBA Legislative Update webinar. Ms. Oaf attended a TSBA School Board Academy, and Ms. Parker, Ms. Landers, and myself will be attending a TSBA Summer Law Institute along with our attorney. Tonight, we have the second final reading on our federal capital, cafeteria, health insurance, and OPEB budgets. Last meeting, we had the final reading on our general fund budget. We will have the third and final reading by our funding body on June 26th. And I want to thank Mr. Jones and the staff for their work on the preparation of the 2017 and 18 budget. So thank you, Mr. Jones, and your staff for all your work.
Yes.
Next on the agenda is the financial report. Mr. Jones?
We have the financial reports. Sorry, you have the financial reports as of May 31, 2017. First, reporting total assets and fund balances within the school operating fund of $16.2 million. Federal projects right at $17,000. The cafeteria fund, $140,000. The capital projects right at $1.3 million. The health insurance fund at $2,146,000. And the OPEB trust at $1,250,000. Updating construction in progress for the Riverdale project, total fixed assets at $65.6 million. And just a couple comments on the statement of revenue and expenses, the cafeteria fund, error mark reporting right at a $31,000 profit for the year. And within the school operating fund, looking at adding roughly $2 million to our fund balance for the 16-17 year.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Next on, under reports is our superintendent.
And I need some assistance on this report. We have our representatives from A2H here tonight, and they'll be helping with our superintendent's report. Chris, is it Herring? Is it Herring? So Chris Herring is working with us on the design process. We do have a design review committee that is meeting to talk about all the details of this project. We have had our, I think our third meeting over this information. Ms. Landers is the board representative on that, so she can also chime in on this process. But we just want to give the board update on the images that we see, and also let them know that this is an ongoing process. And so we are not by any means done with the design of this building. This is just an update on what could be. And so we'd like to highlight some of the key things. So we're going to show everything on the screen, but the board also has packages. So all the images that you see on the screen are also in this big package so everyone in the audience can see. There's also a timeline for the approval process because we have a lot of committees and commissions that we have to go through in order to complete this process. And you also see the rough program for the school that we are operating off of right now, which is the number of classrooms that we need at each grade level, number of special education classrooms, OTPT. It gives the whole detail and square footage of each of the rooms in the building. But we'd just like to highlight some of those things, and we'll take turns. Make sure your mic is on. Hit the button. Yeah.
Herring, and I'm on the design team at A2H. I'm an architect, and we also have Jeff Eakes, who is an architect from A2H, and David Smith, civil engineer from A2H here tonight. And more importantly, I'm a graduate of Dogwood Elementary. So this project is, it's important to me. It's like in my hometown, and it's a great opportunity. So I've been very excited to be a part of this process. We're about 2 months into the design process. We're completing what we call preliminary design, and we'll begin design development next, which is another 3 or 4 months. And then by the time December rolls around, we'll have a complete set of construction documents ready to go to bid in January. So that should give you some idea about where we're at. And so what we're gonna look at now is the culmination of about 2 months of work and what we've established and what we're going to be building on over the next several months. The image up on the screen currently is of the great oak and the pond that are on the site. It's over 35 acres of land, and the pond is well fed, and we aim to keep that. And the oak tree is a historic oak tree. They say it's over 300 years old. So we are sensitive to some of the existing site elements. You want to go to the next slide, please?
So one of the things that you'll see in the design of the building is an emphasis on those features that make it blend into the land. So that's why we start out with the oak tree and with the pond, because they are key features that when we're talking about views of the school and what classrooms look at and what the art room and music, what those buildings look at, those are things that have been taken into consideration.
Right, because there's a goal to create an environment that's, for learning, that's an efficient building, but also something that's connecting back to nature. The image on the screen now is an aerial photo of the site where you can see a heavy white dashed line around the perimeter. Illustrates an area where we've chosen to call it a green zone, where we've tried to keep the buildings away from the neighborhoods. To orient yourself, Forest Hill Irene Road would be on the left in this image. It's on the west. So here you can see Forest Hill on the left is in gray, but what we're showing in this image is Forest Hill expanded. Part of the city's project is to expand it to 4 or 5 lanes to add some space for circulation into the site. So there's a lot happening in this site plan. I think what we'll do is we'll start with the circulation of the cars and the buses. They're generally we're trying to
I'll try to highlight here too.
Yeah.
One of the things that we've tried to do is separate the bus lane from the car rider line, so you can see this is the separate bus lane that's in and out. One of the changes that we recommended at the last meeting was to have the entrance further south and the exit further north, so that we can have a dedicated exit. So just like they do at Houston Middle School, these lanes coming out here, we will block that lane of traffic so that traffic can continue to flow. So that when we stage this school site, we can fill up this entire loop with cars. They can drop off, then the entire loop is exiting at the same time. So it allows for maximum space to put those students on the campus and get them off of Forest Hill Irene. So what you see here is something that won't look like Dogwood or Farmington, where we have traffic backing up in the streets to pick up. We're actually going to have them onto the campus.
Right. In addition, so we have the separate bus drop-off, the separate car lane drop-off. You can see the heavy black arrow indicating the main entrances. The yellow in the plan is the classroom area, and the orange are the physical education, the arts and administration area. Also on the site plan, notice the lake to the north. We're keeping more or less the footprint of that, but there'll be some civil work done to it so that there'll be we'll call it a shelf. So if one were to enter the lake itself, which isn't the intent, but it would only be a foot or so deep for a certain amount of time. We're also showing dashed in and is a potential Germantown Municipal School District central office potential location for it, and parking to the north of the site. There's soccer fields, and there's also 2 other blue areas you see on the plan, which are rainwater retention areas. Those aren't really features per se, but they're part of the civil work for that has to be done in order to meet certain codes for rainwater runoff. Okay.
I think, here, keep it on that, Ms. Graver, sorry. I think one of the other key features that we need to talk about, and we will be thinking about as we talk about this process, is the large amount of space on the far east of this property that we can work in coordination with the city for parkland, that we can get really creative with how are we using all of this green space that surrounds the school. So that's something that we're going to be in talks with the city of Parks and Rec. Are we talking about additional athletic fields? Are we talking about walking courses that are through these woods back here? But we can do something really special on this back property too.
Right, and we're showing the building located significantly off of the street. We wanted to sort of maintain a friendly neighbor environment to the residential neighborhoods on all sides of the site, and we're interested in having a very compact plan. I think we can go to the interior plan now, the first plan. So we looked at several different site plans as well as several different floor plans that have led us to this point now, and some of the things that we would like to maintain are what we call the double loaded corridor, where you have classrooms on both sides of the hallway. We're also showing a 2-story building for the classroom portion. And by doing that, this is actually a very large building. It's over 100,000 square feet. So the length of corridor run could become quite long. And what we've done here in this courtyard type of plan is to condense it and reduce the length of corridors inside the building as much as possible. We also want to create an environment that is not like the Shelby County plans. We're trying to create a new identity and a new brand for the school and the school district. And what we're looking at here is actually something we've been calling the village plan. So that basically the idea is that instead of looking like one giant building, it has a feeling of several smaller buildings assembled together and connected with glass corridors. So that the yellow area you see is the classroom building, and then it's connected on the north by a small glass corridor to what we're calling the arts and science pavilion, where all of the art classroom and music classroom would be. And then we'll connect, through that to the administration area and the PE area. And so hopefully, those will give the experience of a destination when the students leave the classroom. They're not just walking down the hall to the art space or the music space, but it gives a sense of they're leaving the building, they're going through this glass corridor where you have daylight and views on both sides of you, and there's a sense of going to a space within the campus instead of just another room inside the building.
And I think one of the things that we highlight here is this is a continuation of what we call the Germantown brand, what we did with the Riverdale building. We didn't have the long hallways with small windows at the end where that's the only natural light that's coming into the hallway. We have a lot of use of glass so that you see the exterior. So you can see these hallways right here, which really have glass walls similar to what we have at Riverdale. And when we talk about the lake and that huge oak tree that are just north of this, the views inside of the school are going to really be incredible.
Yeah, and so inside the courtyard space, it's actually it's large enough to be programmable in several different ways. It can be used for a learning garden where students can, teachers can plant vegetables, what have you. It can also be used as an extension of the science room or an art space. And it'll be a great, landscape facility. It could also even be used for a pre-function or a breakout space from the things that are happening in the cafeteria or PE. I think we can, okay, so now the way this is set up is we're gonna zoom into the area that is highlighted in red there, and that would be the cafeteria and kitchen. And we're just simply gonna say that we're locating the service entrance on the south away from the primary entrance. There's a platform, stage-like platform, we'll say, in the cafeteria.
So one of the things that we've looked at is when we look at Farmington Stage or Dogwood Stage, for example, we really do have a budding theater program that really has incorporated large numbers of students. When we talk about play productions that have 120, 150 students in those productions, you need large staging areas, and we're putting on high-quality productions so you can see the wings that are built into the stage here, the availability to be backstage, the ability to stage students in the gym and then move them into this area where we're actually going to have the plays. The ability to control lighting in this facility, all those things have been taken into consideration.
So you see the PE entrance to the right there, so you can enter in and go into the kitchen, or maybe we go to the next slide and look at, I think PE is next. Right, so you can enter in and go into the PE area, which is programmed similarly to Riverdale with the retractable bleachers and sort of standard PE. I think there are 4 hoops. And also in this image, we'll see the administration area and the main entrance. So it's very straightforward.
One of the things that we've talked about that you'll see in the Riverdale model and similar to Farmington is that we want to control access of outsiders to the building so that when we do not have the doors open during the main arrival and dismissal periods, we actually control their access in here. So you'll see, similar to what Farmington has, an entry vestibule here where we can have the SRO and then the front desk clerk who are sitting here, that we actually buzz parents and individuals into the school through this, and this is a holding area for those so they don't have access walking into the main building. It's also tied to the attendance office, which is right next to that main entry and vestibule, so we're talking about access through here, so if they need to come in to sign out their child, and then 2 conference rooms and other details in here, but like I said, some of these things could change as we go through programming. This is just initial steps.
Okay. All right, so this is the area where we have the art rooms, the music room, the media center. This is the sort of arts and science pavilion. And we'll have primary north-facing glass, which will provide the best light for art and indirect northern light. The media center is also located in this area.
Which is a library.
Okay.
Code for library.
All right, and then the west wing of classrooms. The dark yellow indicate standard classrooms, either 1 through 3 in this situation on the first floor. The lighter yellow rooms are special education, functional skills classrooms, and the gray areas are where you'll find the restrooms and back of house custodial, things like that. There's a dark blue in there that was representing the teacher work area.
And so one of the things that we looked at was when we were designing the school and the number of classrooms we had talked about the optimal staffing ratios for teacher students. This is built to a 1:18 ratio for that K through 3 grade band. And what we did was it's 2 less students than what the state requires for the maximum teacher-student ratio. So that's why, our staff, Dr. Park, Mr. Bland, Mr. Cathy, they have all worked to design the number of classes and make sure that it's adequate. And Ms. Huppman has looked at our needs through special education, and that's one of the reasons that we have those classes embedded in the main hallways.
Okay. All right. Similarly, the south wing showing classrooms and activity space. We have 3 activity spaces, 1 for kindergarten, 1 for the 1st through 3rd grade, and 1 for the 4th and 5th grade. And the ones for the 4th and 5th grade are on the 2nd floor.
And so I'll highlight, that's one of the design features that we talked about, Ms. Kress. So you can see there's one of the spaces there that this group has really talked about as a common space where if you're doing a wet lab or you're doing an activity with your students, or if you're looking at storage, it's an area that can be used by all the kindergarten teachers, for example, or all the 1st through 3rd grades. Similar to a lab, they can reserve it and say, I'm going to use this space on this day for my lesson. And they can take their students there and work in that common area because it's going to have resources that they don't have in the classroom.
Okay. This is looks like a blow up of, again, an area where the 2 hallways meet, and we'll show the other activity area.
I think one of the key things that our committee talked about was the fact that we actually split the main office space in the school because we have a 2-story building and it is also a large building. We wanted quick access throughout the building. So we have an IT area for our technology people because if a laptop goes down or Promethean board goes down, they're running to their technology person. So this is centrally located along with a guidance counselor and assistant principal. So if there are issues on the 2nd floor or in this wing of the building, they can actually go there and be there quickly. So we thought it was efficient to separate that part of the office.
All right. These images are just showing a general massing of the building on the site. You can orient yourself by Forest Hill Road on the left side in white letters.
There's Forest Hill right there. There's Forest Hill right there. Okay. There's the big loop for car traffic. There's the loop for bus. And we think one of the things that is going to be impressive about this site is as you pull in, you're not just going to be hitting the building right in your face right when you get there. You're actually going to drive through a wooded area before you come across your first view of the building. So it should be an impressive first street appearance for our school.
Mm-hmm. And one of the challenges of a building this size is to sort of break down the massing so it doesn't feel like the scale of what it actually is. And maybe we could look at ways to do that. And that's what these sort of early drawings are showing, how the 2nd floor and the 1st floor may have some differentiation.
And it provides for some architectural creativity in how these buildings lay on top of each other and how interesting they could be.
Yep, that's it. All right.
Okay. And that concludes the first part of my superintendent's report. The next one will be a little less interesting. We really just wanted to keep the board informed about what this process is for designing this new school and the commissions you have. So you also see a timeline that A2H put together for us. I shared something similar. It looks differently with the board about how we would have to go through the process, but it's the same information as what I'd previously shared with you along with the drawings. I think one of the things on our annual agenda that we need to discuss is our salary matrix for our teachers. We discussed this during the budget time.
I'm
Yes.
sorry. So this is this is kind of the schedule, the overview?
Yes, this is
Okay.
scheduled overview.
Would now be an okay time to ask, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Or just an update on, because I know Friday's a deadline.
Oh, you
Do-
mean for the Germantown
Yes.
negotiation?
Have we heard anything? Are we gonna, do we know our plan?
I think that's one of the things that this board is going to have to discuss.
Okay.
I did receive an email back from Mr. Caldwell and from Mr. Orgel stating that they were not sure whether they could get this on their next agenda. So at that point, I'm not optimistic that we're going to receive a response by the 23rd. I do think that this board is going to have to discuss at that point the next steps, that either we are going to create an official letter, or what are the next step for this board once we hit that 23rd deadline. But that is the only response that I have. So I'll send another follow-up email the day before the 23rd comes to ask once again Shelby County Schools is, are they willing to discuss this? Are they going to put this on their agendas, just to give them one more opportunity to discuss this?
Thank you.
Mhm. I thought you had a question about the salary matrix.
No, that's out of my league,
Okay.
no.
Okay, so we just wanted to highlight the steps that we have for this. Hold on one second. I can't read it, Ms. Crowder, so you're going to have to tell me that. Ms. Crowder's got a better view. You have this in front of you for the board, and I'll
Yes,
actually read it
yes,
off of
thank
mine.
you.
Yeah, hold on one second. Sure. Thank you. So just so you can see, we have continued the Shelby County Schools steps structure that we have for paying our teachers in the district. One of the things that we'd like to highlight is we do have two different pay scales for our employees. We have legacy Shelby County school teachers that are on one set of steps. That is this one right here, or no, this is the new one right here. The other one on the back that is in the landscape mode, that is the legacy SCS pay scale. The difference is in what we pay for advanced degrees. When our board was discussing how we structured our pay, if you remember, we did not agree to pay as much for advanced degrees as Legacy Shelby County did. We do pay more for those teachers who do have advanced degrees, so we'll highlight that. So first, let's talk about our new teachers. So Ms. Crowder, if you can go back one slide. So you can see, for example, in this first section right here, go back another slide. It'll highlight right here. When teachers come in at step 0 and they have a bachelor's, they're getting paid $42,343. If those teachers progress through their time in Germantown Municipal Schools, you can see that they get to step 18, where they're making $59,517. One of the things that this board has continued to budget for is the loyalty bonus, so that teachers who have stepped out for the past 2 years, we do provide them what's equivalent to about 2% additional on top of those steps. If you look at the next category of teachers, those are teachers who have acquired their masters. They're getting paid $45,343 when they are for their annual salary when they are at step 0. If those teachers progress for us and teach for 18 years, you can see that they are getting paid $62,517. And then we have our next category, which are teachers who are beyond the masters at either plus 45 or an EDS or an EDD. So you can see at step 0, those teachers are getting paid $47,343. If they are at step 18, which is at the bottom of this chart, so you can see it goes vertically, those teachers are getting paid $64,517. And you can actually see it has a semi-monthly what they're actually getting paid on each of their pay periods too. When we look at the legacy Shelby County teachers, those teachers who are with us before we broke away from Shelby County Schools, they're very similar amounts until we get to the advanced degrees. So you can see it's $42,343 for the bachelor's. It is at step 18, it's $59,517. If we're talking about the masters, those teachers are getting paid $45,778. If we're looking at beyond step 18, they're getting paid $63,775. Then they actually break each of the other categories into 3 different categories. They have their masters plus 45 EDS and EDD, which those teachers still have with us as we're going through. So you can see the amounts of $49,328 at step 0 for someone with a master's plus 45, and that's really on the trimester credits. If you look at they're step 18, they're getting paid $70,000. For EDS, they come in at $60,000. At step 18, they're at $71,000. And then for EDD, they're at $51,862. And at step 18, they're at $72,870. I think this is something that when we get ready for our next budget season again, that we need to look at some of these structures of how we are paying these steps, and we always need to look at how we progress through. I think one of the things that we would recommend is based on the increasing cost is adding a 2% across the board. So in the near future, I think that's something that this board needs to talk about. Not just the steps that we provided in the loyalty bonus, but also shifting the whole scale. So that may be something that our finance department, human resources is bringing to you. And that concludes my superintendent's report.
Thank you, Superintendent. Next on the agenda is citizens to be heard. Thank you, Ms. Subarami. We don't have any citizens to be heard tonight, so we'll proceed. Next is the consent agenda. Tonight on the consent agenda is the second reading of policies family life education, testing programs, grading revision, and revenues, gifts, and bequests. New policy, student records, annual notification of rights, first reading. Revised policy, student wellness, first reading. MOU between Tennessee Department of Education and GMSD for Coordinated School Health LEA grant as amended. Those items are on the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Roll call.
Ms. Parker,
Yes.
Ms. Fisher,
Yes.
Ms. Landers,
Yes.
Ms. Jones.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion has passed. Next on the agenda is revision of policy fringe benefits, first reading. Superintendent?
We just wanted to give an overview that we discussed this during the work session, but I wanted to explain what we're talking about doing. OPEB benefits stands for Other Post-Employment Benefits. That's health insurance that our employees are able, or life insurance that they're able to take into retirement with them. One of the things that this board has been doing really for the past 3 years is looking at how we can fully fund the amount of money for our retirees. And so we've spent a lot of time with the actuaries to come up with different plans, and I think at one point we had about 13 different plans that looked at different items. We do have a committee that Ms. Jones has served on, and Kevin Jones, our CFO, and Mr. Hatto. We do have teacher representatives that have served on that. Ms. Simmons, who is here, served on that committee. She's our GALEA representative. So one of the things that we have looked at and finally narrowed down to are two different plans, a Plan A and a Plan B. We have realized that we cannot continue to fund our current structure for benefits for our employees in retirement and guarantee those benefits to our employees. So we've looked at how can we change that. So one of the things that these two plans come up with is changing how we are providing those benefits. We've divided all of our staff into 3 basic tiers of employees, Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. Tier 1 employees are those employees who are within 10 years of retirement. Tier 2 employees are those employees who are in the middle of their career, so they're at years 10 to years 20. And then we have the individuals who are just starting their career, so they're in the Tier 3. So they're year 0, their first year, to year 9. So in all the plans that we looked at, we have that tiered structure for how we are really grouping our employees. And the reason we did that was because if we are changing benefits for our employees, we wanted to make sure that we give them time to plan for their retirement. So one of the recommendations that we made in all of the plans was no change to the benefits for our employees who are 10 years from retirement, because that's too late for them to be able to save and plan for those changes. What you do see different between Plans A and Plans B are what happened to our brand new employees and what happens to our employees who are with less than 10 years with us. The difference between Plan A and Plan B boils down to 2 things. Plan A offers life insurance for our employees post-65 that is provided by the district. That does have an expensive cost to it. So that would be the positive thing that is in Plan A that is still there, the benefit that they currently have with us. The one thing that changes in Plan A is that for those people who are Tier 2, so if they're in the middle of their career, they would not be allowed to carry their dependents on their retiree health insurance. For me, that was a big loss, because if you're talking about, I'll give the personal example of my wife. When I got ready to retire, if I was in Tier 2, she would not be able to be carried on our insurance. Now, we would provide a stipend, and that amount of money is in there for those people to go out on the market to get insurance, but that would be a loss for us compared to what our employees currently have. If we are looking at the ones who are Tier 3, who are years 0 to 9, those teachers and those staff, they would have a stipend that we would give them to pay for their health insurance. So that is Plan A. They have the life insurance post 65, but they lose their spouse in Tier 2. If you look at Plan B, for example, and Mr. Haddo and Ms. Stratton have done a wonderful job going out to the schools to really educate our staff on what the potential changes could be. And I know Ms. Owen, y'all spent a lot of time looking at these policies and crafting them and recrafting them. The difference with Plan B is there's not that post 65 life insurance for our employees who are looking at Tier 2. But the spouse is still there in the Tier 2. So that's the difference between the two plans of whether those teachers, those staff who are years 10 to years 20 can have their spouse on the plan, or can they have life insurance. Now, one of the things that we investigated to help make this decision is, could our employees pick up that life insurance and carry that as a supplemental insurance the same way we do with vision, with dental, that they could take on that cost themselves. Mr. Haddo reached out and got estimates ranging from $1,600 to $3,000 a year to pick up that life insurance, depending on how much it costs. For me, when we look at the two plans, having your spouse on the plan is a much greater benefit than that cost of that life insurance, because I can guarantee that getting insurance coverage for your spouse is going to be a lot more than $3,200 a year when you look at that. So that's the overall summary of the plans, and so it's up for the board to discuss what would happen. I think the recommendation here tonight would be that this is a first reading policy for us, and that in August we would review this policy. But the fact that the board has already discussed it, looked at it, made a decision on the plan will help educate our staff as far as the direction that they are going. But know that this is a difficult challenge for us, because we know it's a change from the current benefits that our staff have. But know that we are still making that commitment. We are budgeting approximately $830,000 that we have the past 2 years to pay for this, or to fully fund our OPEB requirements. And with that, I will turn it back to you, Ms. Fisher.
Thank you, Superintendent. Do I have a motion for revision of policy, fringe benefits?
I move to approve the revision of policy SS 3.600, fringe benefits per option Plan B, after first reading.
Second.
Any discussion?
In the document, I think on page 3, the section under specifications number 3, it still speaks to post 65 life insurance. I just think we might need to delete that language. I don't know how we handle that.
We are going to update the verbiage after you approve it, so matching the chart.
So it's okay to approve it as it is without,
I
okay,
think she's saying, since there were two plans, Plan A and Plan B, once we approve the plan, then they will clean it up to match the plan that we approve.
If I can be recognized. Ms. Jones, I think I understand what you're saying.
Yes.
I think the verbiage that we have, we may need to modify the amendment
Okay.
or the motion, and I think the way we need to modify it is as amendment, including the information from Plan B.
Okay,
And so then that
perfect.
allows us to go back and add that
modify
correct
it.
information.
Thank
So
you.
I think a friendly amendment to that motion may be required.
Okay. Do you want to?
Our parliamentarian is shaking her head,
Yes.
but
It's fine.
And defer to the expert here.
not really having captured the superintendent's exact wording, I move to approve the revision of policy SS 3.6001, fringe benefits, with appropriate amendments to be included per option Plan B on first reading.
Second.
Is there discussion?
I would just like to thank all those that had a hand in this. I know this is not an easy task to look at this, and of course, this is something that is not set in stone as we look into the future of our benefits for our employees. But I know in my position, I always want to take care of our employees first. And I think that's what we have done from the very start, is to go ahead and fund our OPEB. And I'm proud of that. So I want to thank all those who have had a part in looking back and seeing what we need to do to tighten up our benefit package. And I think this is a way to do it. It gives those employees time enough to look and see if they are serious about retiring with our district, what they need to do to take care of themselves and their family. So, thank you very much.
Yes. I agree with Ms. Parker. One of the things when we started our district was that we wanted to fully fund our OPEB and provide those benefits for our employees. And that's one thing our district has done, is fully funded our OPEB. And it's a hard decision because this is important to our employees and we want to support them. It's been a concern since creating our school district. We've had a committee with teacher representation and district staff and board members that have worked hard to come up with a plan. It's been a concern. Can we continue providing those same benefits? Can we afford them? We've hired outside consultants to look at what's needed to fully fund our OPEB. And so it's a difficult balance to provide the best retirement options as well as manage our costs in today's healthcare environments. And so I feel that Plan B is our best option to try to fit both those worlds. And I thank the staff again for working on everything, especially since it's been a 3-year process.
I'd like to say that I appreciate all the work. I got involved at the tail end, but as the superintendent mentioned, there were over 13 plans that were looked at. And so I can attest to the fact that the administration did the due diligence to try and figure out the best answer for our employees. And I think the commitment that this district is making with over $800,000 that is committed on an annual basis to our retirement benefits is a big number and not something that a lot of districts do. So I thank the administration, especially the teachers who joined us, because their input was the most valuable in my opinion, because that's the real world, that's what the impact could be. So thank you again for all the hard work, and thank you to the board for being patient with us, as well as the good hard questions that you asked.
Roll call?
Ms. Landers?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion is passed. Next on our agenda is revision of fiscal management policies. This is one that we requested to waive the second reading. These are for policy on purchasing, policy on bids and quotations, and policy on purchase orders and quotations. And the reason the staff is asking that the second reading be waived is they would like these purchasing policies to go in effect with our new fiscal year on July 1. And our board will not be meeting in July. We will be taking a break in July and meeting in August. So they've asked that we waive the second reading on these fiscal management policies. And basically, these policies are just the language is being cleaned up by our attorney and by our financial staff. So do I have a motion?
I move to waive the second reading and adopt the revision of policies Fiscal Management 2.805, Purchasing, Fiscal Management 2.806, Bids and Quotations, and Fiscal Management 2.808, Purchase Orders and Contracts after one reading.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Yes. It's me?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
Ms. Parker?
Now I can't find what I was gonna question about. There's bids and quotations. When we do construction, it says we have to go with the lowest bid. Why can't we go with the best bid?
I think the one that I'm looking at is 2.806. And when you look at line 17, it clarifies it as the lowest and/or best bid shall be accepted, provided the purchaser reserves the right to reject any or all bids or any part of any bid. So I think it clarifies that. And then I think on line 20, where it says the board recognizes that the lowest bid may not be the most responsible nor most advantageous. So I think that part of it covers us as far as, yes, the earlier talks about lowest, but this part talks about best.
Right.
But then there was, okay, go to exceptions from competitive bidding. It's page 3 of 4, line 24. For construction of school buildings or additions to existing buildings, the board shall contract following opening bids for the construction of school buildings or additions to existing buildings, the expenditure for which is in excess of $10,000. Public notice shall be given at least 10 days in advance of accepting bids for the construction, and the board shall award the contract to the lowest and best bidder.
I think that what you're saying is probably appropriate, because not only have it in that section, but because it does create a separate section for exemptions from competitive bidding, I would also recommend that we put in there lowest and best too. I think that would be a very good addition.
I want to put lowest and slash or best bidder.
Yes.
Yeah,
Right.
lowest and or best bidder.
Similar to that same language, to your point, Mr. Superintendent, that line 17, just take that same,
That's correct.
yeah. Mhm.
Good catch, Ms. Parker.
Thank you. I do read these things.
Mr.
So do
J?
you want to include as amended before the 2.808? And we will go ahead and change it. Yes. 806. And/or. Yes.
I move to waive the second reading and adopt the revision of policies Fiscal Management 2.805 Purchasing, and as amended, Fiscal Management Policy 2.806 Bids and Quotations, and Fiscal Management 2.808 Purchase Orders and Contracts after one reading.
Second.
Okay, Ms. Landers already seconded, so does that stay?
Do what?
Was that a friendly amendment?
That was an extremely friendly amendment, yes.
Thank you.
I'm going to stroke.
We need to get her out of here.
Did you want to do it?
No,
Oh,
no,
okay.
she's, the procedure might be.
Ms. Parker, did you second that?
I did.
Thank you. Is there further discussion?
I just wanted to say thank you to the staff and Mrs. Owens for going through this. This is a lot of work, and I think the detail for what we're putting in here is very warranted, so thank you very much.
Roll call.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Ms. Landers?
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion has passed.
Next on the agenda is the Aramark contract renewal amendment for 2017-18. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the amendment to the Airmark contract renewal for 2017-18.
Second.
Is there any discussion? I will just add, this is a renewal for Aramark for this next year. Basically, there's no changes. It's showing that we should have a profit of about $4,300 this next year with Aramark, which is far better than our loss of $300,000 several years ago. So we're going in the right direction with Aramark. No further discussion. Roll call.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Ms. Landers?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion has passed. Next on our agenda is the revised GMSD general fund budget for 2017-18. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the revised GMSD general fund budget 2017-18.
Second.
Is there any discussion? I would like to highlight the change that we saw between this and the second and final reading of our budget. We know that as we are going through budget season, based on the state's BEP projections and also grants that we receive, that our projections will change over time. And so what you see reflected in this version of the budget are those changes. So on page 3 and 25, there's a new special education assistant that we received due to a grant that we applied for. We do have changes that we have some students who are coming that are outside of the county, so there is tuition associated with those students. So you see that reflected change in the budget. There's a new SPED grant revenue that we received for a transition case manager and also an assistant position at the high school. You'll see that reflected there. The district office rent increased by 2% on page 28 of the budget. On page 30, there are additional software costs as we convert from Apex, which is our financial accounting system, to Skyward. On page 37, there's an increased, or there's a change in the architect fees to cover some changes. On page 39 and 44, there's a new Tennessee Department of Education allocation for special education preschool discretionary. So that's another grant that we received that we will gladly accept. And then Shelby County Schools reduced the amount of money that they were asking for capital improvements, which because it's a percentage, we receive a percentage of what they request, that is reduced also. So you'll see that reflected in the budget.
Thank you, Superintendent. Any discussion? Roll call?
Ms. Landers?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion is passed. Next on the agenda is the 2017-18 Federal Capital Cafeteria Health Insurance and OPEB budgets, second reading. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the GMSD fiscal year 2017-18 Federal Capital Cafeteria Health Insurance and OPEB budgets after the second reading.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Ms. Landers?
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion is passed. Next on the agenda is the approval of the central office lease agreement. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve our central office lease from July 1, 2017 to June 30th, 2018 with Canon, Austin and Canon in the amount of $155,448.
Second.
Discussion. Superintendent, would you like to comment?
Yes, this is a 2% increase that we received for our lease. We currently rent offices at Care 4 Shopping Center that we have outgrown. So you're seeing that rent there of $155,000, $448. I think that they have been very good landlords. We've been pleased with the service that we have received. But that will lead us into our next item that we want to talk about. But I recommend approving this lease so that we have a place to have our central office.
Roll call?
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Ms. Landers?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion is passed. Next on the agenda is the central office construction. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve A2H Incorporated to begin the design of a new central office space on the Briar Schaefer property.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Superintendent, would you like to
Yes,
provide some information?
one of the things that we've talked about for an extended period of time with this board is what are we doing with central office space? I think that everyone recognizes that the fact that we're paying $155,000 a year in rent is not sustainable when we can put that funding towards a permanent central office space. This is only the first step in the approval, so I would like to highlight that right now. We're just recognizing that we're going to develop a contract with A2H to develop this property for us. We think that's a wise decision because we're building the school on the same property, and if we're talking about design of electrical, plumbing, all of those details, it would make sense to use the same firm for this project. So the next step for us would then bring back a contract to this body to approve that talks about the percentage that they would take, the scope of the project, and then there will be several steps throughout that process that you would eventually have to approve the funding for this project. So the first step is just recognizing A2H as the architect firm for this project.
Thank you, Superintendent. Any further discussion or questions?
Just a question. Is, if our next meeting is the end of August, is that a problem from a contract perspective?
That's something that we may have to address, so
Okay,
we'll look into
sorry,
that.
okay.
If we have the need, and we haven't even begun talking about timelines for
Sure.
what it will take to design this along with the construction of the new school.
Right.
So if we get in a situation where they feel like we need to speed up the design of this and the agreement for this, then we will talk
Okay,
about that issue.
okay, thank you.
And all we're approving at this time is you
firm.
bring a contract to us.
Right.
Going
for-
out and
for them
negotiating with
to-
A2H and then bringing something.
Yeah, I didn't know what
Timeframe.
can't happen before the, like what can't happen until a contract is signed. I don't
That's a
know if
very,
yeah,
that's a very good
okay,
question.
Okay.
Roll call?
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Ms. Landers?
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion is passed. Next on the agenda is miscellaneous 2017-2018 budget amendment, number 1. This amendment is for the addition of educational assistants for all of the schools, elementary schools. I don't know if you want to explain it further, Superintendent?
Do we need a motion first? or-
Oh.
I don't mind
Motion.
explaining it first.
No, it's okay. No, do I have a motion?
I move to approve the miscellaneous budget amendment for the fiscal year 17-18, number 1.
Second.
So-
Superintendent, would you like to explain
Yes,
how
I
the
would be glad- I would be glad to
how
explain
the
this.
educational assistants will be used this next year in our elementary schools?
One of the things that we had discussed during the budget season was the MAP schedule for Dogwood Elementary School. They were tied as far as how they were scheduling those. One of the issues that they were having this past year was they had 30-minute PE sections, and they would have several of those during the school day and school week. But when you're talking about from a teacher's perspective of how much time it takes to take your students to gym, drop them off, then come back and pick them up, there wasn't a real opportunity for them to have common planning time. So Ms. Price, the principal, reached out to Dr. Park and I to help them develop a schedule, and it had some key components that we want to include in that. One was maximize the amount of common planning time for teachers during the school day. And what you see, we gave you modified proposed schedules for them that show that we have 55-minute MAPS periods for students. One, that's an incredible amount of time for the students. It's an incredible amount of time for the teachers. But there were certain things we had to do in order to achieve that. The first was we have a 2-week window for those classes. So you have an A week and a B week. And so when I was an elementary school student, I loved PE. And so a good week for me would have been going to those PE classes. So what you see in some of the weeks is In 1 week, they're only going to PE once, and in the B week, they may be going to it twice, and it depends on what section you have. But the key things that you see in the proposed schedule for the MAPS for Dogwood is that every student during that 3-week period, regardless of the grade band that they're in, is getting 3 PE classes in that 2-week period. They're going to art 2 times during that 2-week period. They're going to music 2 times during that 2-week period. Then also, we have guidance counselors. They will have 1 guidance lesson during that 2-week period. They'll have 1 library class during that 2-week period. And the reason we're requesting this budget amendment is one of the things that we have talked about as a board is increasing the computer skills for our students. We have CTTs at our schools that help serve the teachers and the students with instructional technology. But what we're proposing is adding a teacher assistant at Dogwood and Farmington and Riverdale. And this student will be, or this teacher will be assigned students during that 2-week period where they're going to teach computer skills based upon their grade levels. So if they're in kindergarten or 1st grade or 2nd, they're going to get different lessons. They're going to do that with the help of the CTTs and the schools to help develop those lessons. We have programs to help them do that. And as we get closer to test time, they can also focus, and especially when it goes to all online testing, they can focus on those test skills, like how do they copy and paste in the document? How do they highlight something? How are they writing in that document? So we think it's going to have huge benefits for our students. So that whole big explanation, by providing these teaching assistants at Dogwood and Farmington and Riverdale, we are adding a computer class to the MAP schedules at those schools that is going to help serve students.
Thank you, Superintendent. Any further discussion? Roll call?
Wait a minute.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Sorry, Ms. Parker.
This only works if we have 8 classes.
Yes, but if you look, I'm sorry. It's not only, it's 8 sections for that. So if you look at the 5th grade, 4th grade, and 3rd grade band, I've spent too much time looking at this, you can tell. They have 7 sections in each of those classes. If you're looking at kindergarten, 1st, and 2nd grade, they have 8 sections of those. They did have 9 sections this past year in kindergarten at Dogwood. But we are also adding a new teaching position that we had talked about during the work session and also that we talked about during our budget session. That new teaching position is going to help with ELL, and they're also going to help fill in with music classes too. So there are 3 sections of music they would teach. That position that we were using, one of our growth positions to help teach that MAP schedule, will provide us the flexibility that if any of these sections in 5th, 4th, or 3rd grade goes up to 8 sections, or if in the younger grades, if they go up a section in any of those, it gives us the flexibility to accommodate that.
Okay.
So if you look at the last, the ones that have the green, if you look at the last 2 sections, I think it has a new teacher and also the computer class teachers. There's lots of flexibility. And if you look in the morning for the computer teacher, it's all open. And so with those teaching assistants, there are other things that they can do too besides the computer classes if their sections don't grow. We talked about using them for RTI. We've talked about using them for enrichment with the students. We've talked about Ms. Price can use them to relieve the front desk, so it'll help them with their schedule. It is an additional staffing person, so there's lots of flexibility.
Well, you've even got guidance plugged in here too. So.
Yes. Another thing that you'll see too is there's more flexibility with the guidance that if we had additional sections. There are 2 guidance counselors at each school. We're leaving 1 open at all times to deal with student issues, and 1 is teaching a class during that time. So you could actually, in all of these schedules, you could double the amount of guidance that we have in that school. So we are flexible. We're planning to chuck a job.
Okay, I'm good.
You're good?
I'm good.
Roll call.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Ms. Landers?
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion is passed. Announcements. We have no July board meeting, and our next board meeting will be August 21st. We are adjourned. Thank you.